I don't know. I keep like trying to theorize why Spectre would be the way it is, and the only logical solution to me, or the explanation.
Just think about the way. Look, like with Mechanist, they were like, "What if Engineer only had 2 trait lines?" Okay, like that. That's look. You know, they made Willbender.
True.
What if Guardian was terrible? Right? Like that's that. You know, they've really gone outside the box with a lot of these elite specializations. Right? Dragons, we got ourselves a lovely gameplay feature trailer. More streams to come up there with the Jade Mastery, the Jade Bot Mastery being discussed next week, of course. We got the Cantha stream, New Kaining City, where they killed a cat brutally live on stream. 25,000 views on live stream fells, by the way. I mean, look, Guild Wars 2 is finally making it. We've made it all the way there. We love to see that. And they showed a giant jade dog, right? And, you know, that's good. And we also learned that the Tengu live in squalor in New Kaining City. Feels bad, right? You know, they're in a derelict, rundown area. That, you know, it feels pretty bad for them. But don't worry. I'm sure we're going to go and help them do that with some heart quests and build up Baraka. But anyway, Sneb is here.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so
doing well.
You know what? First up, release date, 28th February.
I was actually
Monday.
Really surprised about that. Selfishly, I was hoping they put it on the Friday, because what I was going to do was just take the Friday and the Monday off.
Ooh,
like have the whole
grind.
Extra long weekend to play the game. I thought that would be super sick. But now I can just take the Monday and Tuesday off. So it feels like a little weird. I don't know. What it feels like to me is that they had to get it out in February. So they put it on the last possible day so that they could prepare as much as possible. They're probably going to be grinding that weekend, so I do not envy them. They're probably going to be grinding. Like, they're all going to be in the office, well, in their home offices, trying to make sure that the game functions. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it, but look, I'm glad that they're releasing it in February, because I feel like if they had pushed it again, that would have been a really...
The morale, it would have been low.
Yeah, the
low morale
would have... Yeah, and I mean, that's putting it lightly. I think it would have been an absolute storm if they had delayed it again. Even as much as people were saying on Reddit and on social media, they're like, ArenaNet, it's okay. Just delay it.
They were like we'll preparing
fine,
themselves.
Right?
They were just preparing themselves mentally for it. Yeah.
They had already dug their like bomb shelter and everything. Like, it's okay, ArenaNet. Like, just lay it on us, right? But in reality, they think that would have been okay, but it probably wouldn't have been okay. I think the majority of players would have been really upset. Like, imagine if they delayed it and they'd be like, June, right? Like, everyone would have been like, what? People would have been really upset. So I'm glad that, you know, it's all coming together. I think it's gonna be fun to play on launch. I think it's a little. I think people are disappointed that it came out so late and that some people aren't able to take time off. I'm fortunate in that my company is pretty chill about it. They didn't even ask any questions. They didn't even put why I was taking the 2 days off. I was just like, these two random this random Monday and Tuesday, yeah, those are off. And my supervisor probably looked at it and was like, okay. So, but yeah, it's unfortunate. Lots of people probably won't, and it makes it kind of strange to take time. Like, some people are taking a whole week off, and it's a lot of time to take off for some people. Yeah,
I think that it being on a Monday is also somewhat advantageous for like dealing with issues, right? Because obviously it might be you know, on a Monday, that means it's right at the beginning of the work week. So that means if there are bugs, they're going to have people, you know, ready to go, ready to pounce on those bugs to make sure that things aren't completely broken, because we don't know like what state the expansion actually is right now. I don't want to be too pessimistic. I don't want to spread some fear right now, but because in general, Guild Wars 2 expansion launches have actually been really good, right? Like, just to set the precedent here, Path of Fire, there was one bug, I believe, and it was preventing you from getting into one of the early story instances. There was like an error that was causing instances for the new story to not be created, so you couldn't progress. But other than that, it was actually everything kind of worked just first try out of the box. So there's no reason to expect that, but just in case there is something going wrong, like maybe it is a slightly more intense development schedule they had for Ender Dragons compared to something like Path of Fire or Heart of Thorns, maybe, you know, that could be an issue. You know, there was actually a really fun bug. You'll like this one, Sneb. This one will bring you joy, actually. I encountered this bug quite a lot, actually. I think I did this twice before I realized what happened. There was an instance in Path of Fire where you had to save some NPCs in like a temple from this kind of Herald of Balthazar, right? And ArenaNet didn't expect you to kill it really quickly. So if you did too much DPS to this thing, it would stall the script and break the instance, right? So I was like, wait, why is it broken? Why is it broken? And I had to, someone in the chat had to tell me, like, listen, buddy, you've got to slow down a little bit, okay? Otherwise, it's going to completely break. So yeah, there you go. You know, they'll be able to fix stuff like that, no problem, if that's the case with you know, with this different approach as well. But yeah, Monday gaming. I think it's just worth knowing a little bit. I just got to slide this in here as well. You got to get that humor in here. But look, there's no way people could handle a delay. People were big mad about it being Monday, right? You know, there were like 3 Reddit posts about it being Monday. Okay, so delaying it to June, it would have crashed the servers, right? It would have destroyed the game. The community would have had a civil war, right? Ripping each other to shreds.
Kind of like Kurzix versus Luxons.
Big. That's big. Okay, yeah.
Tying it all back. Maybe this was the whole plan, right? Unleash terror, make people take sides. Suddenly, we have a full-out war.
We brought back Kurzix versus Luxon in real life. Yeah, you can role play as the divided nation of Cantha, but it's in real life. People are arguing on the internet if the release date and the delay is okay. It's great. You know, we have the two sides clashing and battling there. But yeah, it's good that we finally do have that release date. Obviously, a little bit later than I imagine, than a lot of people wanted. But I know you're a man who enjoys a little marketing, Sneb. I know you're a marketing enjoyer. And I do think this is actually worth discussing in its own right. I really like the gameplay features trailer they released when they dropped the release date. I liked it a lot, actually. I thought it was really good.
Me too.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I think... oh man, I could gush for ages. I love that they didn't mention any of the characters that we already know. They didn't do any like in-joke memes. They didn't mention Aurene. They didn't mention any of, you know, the Pact Commander. No, it was like a new thread of intrigue that makes sense even if you don't already play the game. It explains the context of why we're going to Cantha, like what's going on with the expansion, even to players who don't play the game. It's exciting. It shows off all the cool features. You can have a Jade bot that will revive you. So that means all the people AFKing at open world bosses, now they have no excuse, right? If they're dead, boom, Jade bot reses them. So zero excuse right now for leeching open world events. I like that. That's good. Yeah. They showed bosses. There's a giant fish that's going to eat you. There's a giant Jade dog. We saw a little bit of that on the new Kaineng stream as well, actually, which was pretty awesome. And yeah, what's not to love? You know, I think they did a really great job of actually creating that kind of hype trailer that could be presented to a player who's maybe kind of unaware of Guild Wars 2 or just drifting around looking for a new game to play. I think it will be very effective. I was a really big fan of it. I hope they do more like that, right? I want to see stuff like that for the Living Story episodes, right? When they drop like a content release, boom, get a trailer like that out there, right? When they've got new features, I want to see a trailer like that for alliances, right? For World Wars 1, like bam, here we go, right? Get that out there. A trailer like that for DX11, like maybe they get some like new cool particle effects or lighting, then bam, get a cool cinematic trailer. Say, yeah, look, Guild Wars 2 will run at 32 FPS instead of just 30 now on your, you know, on your 2010 MacBook. It's going to be great.
Yeah, look, it was so good. I thought it was a little weird that I could watch it the day before, but but it was really good nonetheless. Like, you know, I sat back with my popcorn, I watched that whole thing, and I was like, dang, like I was kind of in shock that we didn't have something like that sooner, because I think, stay with me here, I think that if they flipped the order of the cinematics or the trailers or whatever, I think that would have been better. Like, sort of like those vague teasers are almost better now than they would be, because they didn't tell us anything. Like, if they had taken this thing that they just showed and they had paid the influencers to show that on their stream, I think their ROI would have been a little bit higher, is what I'm saying. Because these like vague teasers that really told nobody, or told people almost nothing about the game, they like actually actively went out and paid big WoW streamers and stuff to do that. And I can't imagine those were super effective. This trailer, though, is so good. Like, it gives you like little little bites of what to expect. It's not too like in crowd. So, like you suggested, it's not dropping a bunch of names of characters that the average person might not know, but it's sort of introducing some characters and introducing a setting, and I liked that a lot. It actually made me really hype for it. And then the big fish thing underwater. I thought that was boss. Like I was like, oh, sick. Like there's like some big underwater boss. Like I'm down. Like that could be really interesting, right? So I don't know. I just thought it was overall really well done. It got me like I had like goosebumps the first time I watched it. I was like, oh man, like this is like exciting and this is cool. Like it was one of the first times in the last few months that I really sat back and went, oh yeah, like this is why I'm excited for the game. Because there's some potential here. They have cool things to show us. My only critique of this is, man, why didn't they do it sooner? Because I feel like we could have been building so much more hype. Now, I also still am kind of sus because they showed us like 3 seconds of the strike mission. It had like no no mechanics or anything. So I'm still waiting for that. But otherwise, I was really impressed by it. I think that all of them should be like that.
Yeah, I mean, on the why they didn't do it sooner, and I think I think they didn't do it sooner because I feel like they wouldn't have been able to really maintain that hype. I think this is something that Arena has struggled with a lot of the time, but even more so when they're releasing an expansion. Like, why didn't they show us the strike missions? Because they didn't want to spoil anything. Why aren't they showing gameplay? Why are they disabling every NPC and event on these maps that they're touring? Because they don't want to spoil the story. So it's like, they can show us that trailer in like super little bite-sized pieces, but they can't actually show anything else with the expansion. There's like nothing they can actually show because a lot of the features that they're shipping, stuff like the strike missions, even stuff like the new mount, right? And these new open world, these events, right? That's the big thing that I think that's going to get people a little bit excited. It's like, wow, all these new maps to explore, all these new events to do, these new world bosses to fight. It's very difficult for them to actually show this. So if they dropped that trailer like a few months ago, then I think that's like the only like big drop they have, right? So I think it makes sense. I think they focus a lot on the in-group stuff up until now, right? And then they drop this big thing and then go like that. Because like, okay, yeah, we're doing an expansion. Please don't quit our game. Please don't burn the community to the ground, okay? We actually love you guys. So they released this really weird amorphous Aurene trailer, right? Which just is just weird. They have like WoW streamers looking. I do agree that they should have had, if there was any trailer to get people to watch from other games, it's definitely this one. It's not the Aurene one, right? Like I'm pretty sure that, if you're a player who's playing WoW and you see the Aurene trailer, you just start spamming question marks in the chat. You have no idea what that means. It's like totally meaningless to you. You don't even know it's Guild Wars 2 until you see the logo at the end, right? Like it's like, what even is this? So for sure, this is definitely a trailer that I'd like to see, shown off to other audiences like a lot more. And this type of trailer is much better for that sort of thing. But I think it does make sense that they did it in this way because they're looking to build that hype leading up to the expansion. I just don't really think that the way they have their expansion set up and the type of content that they can really show, they can't maintain that hype for that long because they just can't show anything. And you could argue that's a problem with the way they develop content, and you'd be right, to be honest. They probably should develop content in a way that they can kind of show it so people can get excited about it before it actually drops, so they can build a little bit of excitement and a bit of marketing there. Because right now, it's hard to market the game, right? It's actually hard to do it.
I kind of just pause here and like sit on that thought for a second, because that's kind of interesting. Because in a way, they are doing this, right? So what you want to do when you're releasing something like this is you want to try to keep the game top of mind for people, and you do that by dripping content. So you can't give everybody, you don't want to spoil the surprise and uncover everything right away, because then people will be like, oh, sick, and then 3 months later they've forgotten about you, right? So you want to like slowly build over time, and in a sense they have done that. But I wonder if it's the length of time in which they've been doing that most dramatically impacts people's perceptions of the hype. Also, I think there's kind of a bit of an issue when it comes to the order of the in-crowd stuff. Like, I feel like there was too much in-crowd stuff for so long that you just couldn't attract the out crowd. Now, the question is, are they even trying to attract the out crowd, right? I mean, clearly now they are. So was that top of mind? Was that focus for them? I think maybe not. But how are they going to drip for the rest of the month, right? What did that roadmap say? They're going to show off music. They're going to show off
Jade bot.
The Jade bot. Okay. So are those in crowd or out crowd things?
It's interesting. Like this is what I mean. Look, and okay, I say this with love. I really like the music of Guild Wars 2 a lot. I am really interested to hear all of it, and I hope that we can download all of it or get access to it like as soon as they actually show it off on the 18th. But the fact that they're doing like a stream dedicated to music kind of tells me, we are struggling to fill the time, right? Like with things that you can actually show prospective new players, because I don't think that's super. I mean, maybe it's a little interesting.
Do you not perceive the music to be substantive then, right? Like this is like a good question.
I do, but not to players who don't play the game already, right? I'm definitely going to watch, and I'm definitely going to get all of it because I really like the tunes. I think that some of the stuff they've been doing more recently, actually, with the Icebrood Saga, I love it. I think it's really creative. It's different, right? It's a little bit out there. That's awesome. I love it. I have it on my playlist. I am a big Guild Wars 2 music enjoyer, but it's obviously difficult for them to fill things with gameplay, right? I feel like when people are like, "Oh, new MMO, let's go, new MMO," they want to see, okay, what am I doing? What am I fighting? What am I farming? What am I doing in the game? What mechanics does it have? What's the meat, right? And the music is not the meat. The music is, what's there in the background that you don't even notice it, but it enhances the experience a lot, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I in some ways I want to agree with you, but I'm trying to sort of acknowledge my own bias and thinking like, yeah, I love the music, a lot. Like I have like a signed Guild Wars 2 soundtrack. I have like all the soundtracks from every game. I love the music a lot. I actually went to PAX and went to like a little speech about how they do sound effects and stuff in Guild Wars 2. I actually think they have a really talented team. But there's still like this little part of me that wonders, kind of what you were alluding to, right? Are they just trying to fill time? Like, is the music substantive enough to warrant doing a big stream about it like a week or two before the release? Or should we have something else a week or two before the release that's like more gameplay focused, or more how you're going to interact with other players in the game, or like a systems change, or introducing something that I might perceive as more substantive?
What if they don't have that?
What if they don't? Well, that's the question. So now people think, okay, well, are they just doing the music because they don't have anything else? And this actually leads me to an even more interesting question, which I don't remember if I was speaking with you about this or somebody else, but I've thought a lot about this. They were originally going to release the game last year. Did they not have any of this marketing stuff ready then? And if they didn't, was it because they were waiting for gameplay stuff? Or like what was the reason? You'd think that if you were given an extra, let's say they had, and we don't know this, right? But let's say they had planned to release the game in like September, October or something, or even August. They would have had to have all the marketing stuff done by like June, July, depending on when, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, they probably would have had, all this extra time potentially to either further refine or to add more. So I've thought a lot about that. Like, if we don't perceive some of the stuff as to be wicked substantive, hadn't they had extra time?
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think the problem is they don't have substantive content. It's just a slight issue with the way that a lot of the Guild Wars 2 stuff is developed, right? It's so interlinked with the story. Like, everything is to do with the story, basically, that they can't really show anything. I'm not saying they don't have anything, it's that they can't. They don't have the option to really show a lot of the meat of the expansion, because doing that would essentially spoil the story. And that's probably something they should look at in the future, right? There should be a strike mission. I mean, look, I love this meme because it's just funny, right? Like, there's something about saying giant crab that's quite entertaining. Like, there was this image of a giant crab, right, in one of the EoD preview streams. I was like, dude, what if that giant crab is a strike mission? Show that giant crab. You can see the entire battle. It's like totally disconnected from the story. But the way that Guild Wars 2 development is going right now is that everything is in the story, right? So every strike mission is part of the story right now. You know, all the open world maps have got loads of story elements, so we can't show the events. We can't show the bosses, right? It's all there. Like, I'm pretty sure, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, there might even be another map that they haven't even shown us yet, because they talked about this on the Arborstone thing, that it's actually in the future compared to all the other maps, and you have to do some of the story to get to it. So they couldn't even show that map because it would, its very existence be a spoiler. Because of the fact that it's essentially ahead of when you arrive in Cantha, right? Like, they have this they have this map where time has moved on a little bit to account for certain events within the story. It's a pretty interesting thing, actually. That's an interesting concept, actually, to kind of have that certain level of dynamism, right? A little bit of dynamic change that will actually change the environment a little bit while you're playing through the story. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what that actually looks like. But everything they do is spoiler bound, and that makes it very difficult for them to showcase things at all, right? Like, that's the issue. It's not they don't have it, it's that it's just very difficult to show any of it without spoiling it, right? I feel like they need to have
generally a misunderstanding then in the community. Like, do you think that people are like, oh, they just choosing not to show us anything, blah, blah, and like people are pretty critical of this, right? Do you think that people just don't fundamentally understand that they're like trying to protect the player in a sense? They're like trying to protect the player base from being spoiled.
Well, that is what they're doing. But I think it's not as easy as saying, oh yeah, one side is right, the other side is wrong. I think that players should understand that, and I do. Obviously, I want to see more. I'd love to see these strike missions, but I get it. They don't want to spoil the story. That's fair enough. I'm okay with that. But on the other hand, I do think that for future releases, ArenaNet should probably have a few things that they could show off, like interesting boss fights or interesting new features that they can show without spoiling the story at the same time. It's like, I think both, there's work to be done on both sides here, on the player side and on the developer side.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's still, and I think we had spoken about this a while back. Maybe it was on Xandri's, but I still can't help but feel this like strange sense of just, maybe it's because there's a lot going on, right? Because I'm moving and whatever, but I have this sort of like sense of numb when it comes to the game right now, because I'm just like, holy crap, I don't know what to expect at all. I don't know, it feels kind of weird, right? There's no, how soon after release do you think they'll make another roadmap?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a big deal for me, right? Because for me, the biggest part of EoD is actually what happens after, because of the strike CMs and stuff. So how quickly will they make another roadmap to say, hey, this is, now we're putting the CMs, now we're doing this, right? Because we don't have a date for strike CMs, right? So like, when are they gonna say, all right, strike CMs are coming? Is it 2 weeks after, a month after, 2 months after, 3 months? How long will people have to wait for the challenging end game content that they're looking for? And by people, I mean that 1%, as people will nitpick me for.
That's a really interesting one. I would hope very early on, right? That would be the goal, right? Would be to, to get this very, very early on. So maybe like a few weeks after launch, maybe they would give us a roadmap on this stuff. But the thing is, a lot of these strike mission challenges are presumably coming out fairly early, right?
Yeah, but when, right? We've had, they just said they'll come out soon after EoD, but they said soon about alliances. They said soon about the Gen 2 legendaries, right? So I think this is a big turning point for Guild Wars 2, right? When they say soon after, what do they mean, right? What and how are they going to be transparent about communicating that? Are they going to say, I think my personal preference is like within a month after.
I mean, that would certainly be the window that at the latest, right?
Yeah, I feel like week 4 they say, "Hey, we've had a great launch. We've been busy fixing different things and doing X, Y, and Z. We're looking forward to the future. Here's a few of the tentative plans," right? I feel like if they did that, I'd be really down. If they wait like 3 months, like a whole quarter, and then they say, "All right, now," I feel like that's too long, right?
I think this problem, the reason this is necessary is because of the history of the game, though, I think. So, ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2, it's never had like this very stable release schedule. The only thing that's really been stable is Living World, right? Like every 3 months you'll get a new episode of the story. But everything else outside of that has been completely random almost. Like, oh yeah, are you going to get a raid wing in 2 months or are you going to get it in 2 years? We don't know, right? Like there's no plan for any of that, right? You know, when is World versus World Alliances coming? You know, with the first post about alliances was like 3 years ago, maybe even like 4 years ago or something like this, right? We've got no idea when this stuff is happening. So the lack of consistency really requires ArenaNet to be very proactive, I think, with their communication. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, what you described yourself as being very numb. I think that's where a lot of people are right now. Like they've got a hype vaccine, right? They're immune to it, right? Like, it doesn't work on them at this point, which I think is partially why Arena didn't really go too hard on the in-group hype stuff. Really, like just some kind of in-group breadcrumbs. They didn't really try and build this massive hype train. I think a big part of that is because they are actually very aware of the way their community is right now, specifically like the high-end veteran community. Yeah, they're trying to manage expectations, but also they realize that no matter what they do, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually get people interested in the game, simply because people don't know what to expect, right? When you've got like a WoW expansion, you know, okay, dungeons, raids, story, boom. Final Fantasy expansion, okay, dungeons, raids, story, boom. Everyone knows what's going to happen, right? Like, you know, we all know what this content is going to be, right? We all know what comes along with that. Like with Guild Wars 2, no one knows, right? Like, you know, who knows? It's even more uncertain because we have new leadership, right? You know, Grouch is back at the company, Colin's back at the company as well. You know, JT also kind of like the trio of leadership at ArenaNet right now. They're going crazy, doing some new things. They've proposed loads of new ideas, but this is why. I mean, I completely agree with you that the after EoD is way more important than actual EoD itself. Because
Chad
they
actually
need
helped
to
us
deliver
out
this.
here.
Oh, really?
They said, challenge modes will be enabled the weeks after the Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons launch. So they didn't commit to a specific date, which is smart at this point, right? But weeks after, what does that mean? To me, I interpret that as like 2 to 4 weeks. So within a month. That's how I interpret that. I don't know if other people interpret that differently, but that's how that's just my perception of what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I again, they're obviously being, you know, fairly big brain about the way they're approaching that to make sure they don't have to go too crazy with that. But yeah, it'll be within months, right? It will be within the first month, I imagine. And I think they want to do that, right? Because they want to have the big drop of the hype at the start. Because I believe they're doing them one at a time as well. They're not actually doing them all in one go. I think they've said this. And they want to kind of, oh yeah, hype bump, right? Like, oh, new challenge mode, world's first, right? New challenge mode, world's first. And there'll be 4 of them. So you'll have these instances where people will get excited about something again over time, which I think is really good. So maybe we get some information there as well about what's going to be happening and some of their plans after that, because it certainly is an uncertain time for Guild Wars 2. I think that even I, you know, as someone who's played the game a long time, I've seen many things come and go. I don't think I'd be very comfortable predicting what ArenaNet is going to do. You know, if ANET said like next week, yeah, we're going to bring dungeons back, right? I would be like, I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be that surprised, you know? Like if ANET say, you know what? Okay. Strike missions, actually, terrible. You know, we're not doing that anymore. I'd be surprised, right? But you know, it's not like off the table, right? You know, I like anything could happen. It's very unpredictable, and I think
imagine they just delete the portal and Eye of the North.
Yeah,
like, we just
that's
decided,
gone.
we were gonna redo the reward structure, but it's just too much. The portal's just removed.
Like that level of unpredictability is what rustles people, I think, and gets people a little bit nervous about the game, which is why it's difficult to get people excited, because they don't know what exactly they're going to be excited for, and they don't know what's going to be happening, like, you know, what's going to be happening with their time investment into the game, like after the launch of the expansion. So I know it's really, really weird to say this, but I think that a lot of the concerns will be alleviated after the expansion. But the other problem is that's the only way they can do it. I don't think ArenaNet can say anything or do anything now that would get rid of this problem. The only way to get rid of this problem is to actually do stuff, right? Is to actually do things after the expansion and continue this like type of communication, because there really is no other solution. Yeah, there you go.
Chat's helping us out again. We'll give more precise details on when you can expect challenge modes to release as we get closer to launch day. So we should know soon.
That's interesting, actually. I presume that...
I mean, that would be ideal, but...
Yeah, that actually sounds really good, because we actually don't know the time the expansion releases as well.
But, yeah, that's actually bothering me. What if it's like just before midnight? It's actually Tuesday.
Yeah, I think that would be really funny. Yeah, we're gonna release it like 1 minute before Tuesday, 1 minute before the 1st, just to give us that. You get a few cheeky builds in, like build the game real quick, and then boom, ship that right.
Meanwhile, at ArenaNet headquarters, you just see them just like madly coding in the last map, the last story.
They're enabling all the NPCs again, right? They had them all disabled for all the demos. It was like, quick, we forgot one. Put him back in.
They can't figure out how to resurrect the cat. They're just like...
Try to mess around with the dev command to respawn. Like, oh, we can't do it. Like, Connor, why did you do this? You've killed the cat permanently. What have you done?
All of the code is tied to the cat, and like the game just doesn't function without the cat.
That is a super interesting point, though, like as a general thing, because I hope we do get a bit of a schedule like that. You know, that would be cool to bundle it in with the challenge modes. Like, oh yeah, we're launching at 5 p.m. GMT on the Monday, whatever, right? Doesn't really matter when it is. But let's suppose that's when that would be normal patch time, basically. That's why I say that. Like normal patch time on the Monday, boom, here we go. And then a week after that, CM number 1. A week after that, CM number 2, right? That would be super interesting if we had that. But on the second thing, like the fact that it's kind of implied there's going to be some posts and updates outside of the streams on the Fridays. What else do you think they could give with that, actually?
Because posts and updates outside of the Fridays.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean leading up?
Outside of the streams, yeah, leading up to it. Like the big one for me, because I don't know if you remember this, Sneb, but before an expansion, there's typically a balance patch where they just nerf the hell out of everything in the game, so the new specs are good. That happened with Path of Fire. It was really funny, actually. Like, you know, I can't mention this without actually finding this amusing. I love this, Sneb. This story makes me so happy. Like, everyone is so naive, even at ArenaNet. Okay, like before Path of Fire, ArenaNet nerfed all of the Heart of Thorn specs, and like, yeah, dude, like Tempest in PvP. Holy shit. That's so strong with all of its healing. We're gonna have to gut it so that Firebrand is able to compete with it. Like.
And then the Firebrand Scourge meta came to be.
Seriously, when they dropped Scourge in Path of Fire, right? Like every proc of Desert Shroud proc Doomfire. So in PvP, you could unironically like 1v5 with Scourge because it would just do so much damage in a massive AoE, and you could hit. You could use a double Boon Corrupt on your Nefarious Favor every 4 seconds in PvP, and it did power damage as well, right? And you were insanely tanky because you had all the barrier stuff. You could literally 1v5 on this build. On Spellbreaker, you had 8k full counter crits. Again, you could literally 1v5 people on this build. And they were like, some of this Heart of Thorn stuff might be a little bit too good. Better nerf it real quick to make sure that Path of Fire is able to compete.
Yeah, well, I mean, I honestly I wasn't like really into endgame stuff at the time, so I have no conception of like what was super good back then and what needed to be nerfed. But my perception now is that if they don't nerf the POF stuff, there's no reason to play the EOD stuff at all, right? They have to nerf it, especially there are some like big problems, and I think they're mostly like Firebrand, Scourge in PvE, at least. In PvE, they're big problems, right?
And Renegade.
Scourge is just too. Oh yeah, and Renegade, of course, and Renegade. Don't let me forget Renegade. They're all big problems because they have too much sustain / damage mitigation, or they provide boons or some crazy utility while still doing ridiculous damage, right? Like, holy, they've got to do something. They can't leave it. So I think that they will probably. I mean, I hope they actually release it beforehand, because I think it'll be like sensory overload if they like they release EOD and like the patch notes are like 20 pages and it's just like, yeah, we nerfed everything. Here you go, right? That would be a bit rough. But I think they're gonna absolutely brutalize them. I do. I if they don't brutalize Firebrand, we've got a big problem, I think. Because I'm going to make a big prediction here. A big prediction. Months ago on TeaTime, we had talked about how, some things are 10-man, some are 5-man. I think they're going to switch that stuff up. I think they have to. Just given what we've seen based on the EOD stuff, a bunch of it is just 5-person. Mm-hmm. I actually can't recall anything that was 10 for the EOD specs. Am I wrong about that? Is there anything that was like 10 target?
Well, I mean, yeah, this is why that we talked about this for a while, right? It is very pointed, right, that there's no 10 target with EOD, right? There's nothing, right? Very
so I'm really sad about that, selfishly, because I became really, I'm not like, oh, look at me, I'm so good at Heal Tempest, but I've been tanking every fight on Heal Tempest and loving it, because you can just absolutely carry the boons and just rebound. Everybody's back alive. Like, it's great. I've been having a lot of fun with that, but it will murder Tempest. Like, Tempest will just be annihilated. And if they don't nerf Firebrand and that happens, Firebrand becomes absolute God mode in everything. Right? Like, everything PvE, Firebrand becomes God mode, because Aegis is just so powerful. I don't know. I'm really concerned that if they don't nerf Firebrand, that it's going to be only Firebrand meta.
Oh, yeah. There are certainly some weird interactions, because one of Firebrand's weaknesses, right, for raid content is that it doesn't have 10 target access. But that's one of the things that makes Tempest and Druid so good. The problem is that if you remove that weakness, because everything goes down to that, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, actual insane build now, for sure. I think, funnily enough, Tempest is actually the middle ground. I think Tempest kind of benefits from things going 5 target, because one of the reasons why you wouldn't run Tempest right now is because you already have a Druid, right, which is handling all those boons anyway, kind of, a little bit, not quite as well as a Tempest. But if you have everything being 5 target, well, then at that point, you can kind of justify taking 1 Druid and 1 Tempest. But for sure, yeah, the big winner from everything going 5 target would definitely be Firebrand. Firebrand is like, I love this. It's already the king of 5-player content, right? It dominates Fractals for a very good reason, because all of its strengths are epitomized in Fractals and none of its weaknesses apply, right? Literally none of them apply in that game mode. So it's just the ultimate build for Fractals. If you're playing
Aegis becomes even stronger. Like that, oh man, they have to do something about that. Because then you just stack Firebrand and spam Aegis, because the healing isn't as like if you don't have something like Druid or Tempest. I mean, Tempest has like a bunch of 10 target heals, right? If you don't have something like that, then you just want to damage mitigate as much as possible. So you may as well just chuck more Aegis at random. This is why I think that they should nerf Aegis, to make it so that everything that applies Aegis can only apply it for like a maximum duration of like 2 seconds. So that
you
Aegis
can't spam it, right? You have to be a bit more reactive.
Reactionary. Yeah,
it's really weird. I don't want to go too into like the 10 target versus 5 target debate, but I actually have a lot of sympathy for 10 target, because I think that having a target cap that is equal to or greater than the size of the group is actually a bit more intuitive. I think it's really weird that you could be standing right next to someone and a boon or a heal won't apply to them because they're in another subgroup, and a player who's at nearly full health, like missing 10 HP or whatever, right, will get healed and have that boon applied to them instead of the player who kind of needs it more, if that makes any sense, right? I find that's a really weird, unintuitive concept that is... 10 target is really overpowered, but it's not all bad. That's the statement I want to make. Boom. There you go.
I just had this like random thought. What if...
Ooh.
Oh my gosh. What if they like took away the subgroup prioritization and suddenly, because you know how... why am I blanking on its name? That just shows that I didn't play it. Oh my gosh. The new Thief spec. What is it called?
Spectre?
Spectre. Oh my gosh. I kept wanting to say Willbender because that's... Anyway, that's the Guardian. Anyway, Spectre. You know how Spectre had the target heals and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be good if there was no like proximity and or if it was only proximity and there were no subgroup heals, in a sense. Because now you could just pick the person that you want to heal. I mean, it's still not that great, but like, what if everything became proximity based rather than... that would make the game really weird. I'd be like, well, that'd just be such a significant change.
I don't think they would do that because I think they... In some ways, Spectre is weird because it's very against the spirit of Guild Wars 2. Like, everything you do in Guild Wars 2, you're never clicking on the interface, right? You're always aiming things in the 3D world rather than playing with the interface. So I don't think they'd want to move more to that direction, right? I think it would...
But they know this, right? Like, they made Spectre purposefully break the rules, in a sense.
Yep. If
they're going to do that, then there's got to be some massive shift on the way. And I'm curious what that would be. And the reason I bring up the subgroup thing is the subgroups are probably one of the most misunderstood things in the game. Like, people don't understand how skills prioritize in general. And a lot of people don't realize which skills apply to 5 target, which apply to 10 because they
can't read.
They just don't read them really, right? And it's not super intuitive. And to be fair, right, having just some skills do it and some don't, it's confusing. So I think about that and I go, well, that would eliminate the confusion a little bit, but maybe cause more for quite a while.
I don't think there's going to be a massive shift because of Spectre. I think ArenaNet I don't think they design things like that. They're like, wouldn't it be cool if Thief had a single target support spec? That was their thought process.
And then they just... I guess I wonder if I suppose in PvP this single target support spec might be a little bit better, but I still don't. I don't know. I keep like trying to theorize why Spectre would be the way it is, and the only logical solution to me, or the explanation.
Just think about the way. Look, like with Mechanist, they were like, "What if Engineer only had 2 trait lines?" Okay, like that. That's look. You know. They made Willbender. True. What if Guardian was terrible, right? Like that, you know, they've really gone outside the box with a lot of these elite specializations, right?
What if instead of making Necro tanky, we made it die by itself?
So, you know, they've really come up with some wild memes. Like with the expansion. I'm joking a little bit, by the way, guys. I actually like, I think Mechanist, it will honestly be perfectly fine. A lot of the Ender Dragon specs, just to be clear, that was a joke, everyone. Please don't write horrible comments about how actually it's OP. Like, you know, these specs will be fine. They're just a little undertuned right now, particularly compared with what we have. And one of the issues with Ender Dragon specs is that they're actually quite well designed. You might go, TeaTime, why is that an issue? Well, it's because a lot of the Path of Fire ones aren't. And it turns out that kind of bad, overpowered design will trump good design a lot of the time, which is kind of like what we're getting at here, right? With this big balance patch. But I think we should move away from this, right? I think we should talk about like kind of the idea of the actual patch. There's all like so. I agree with you that they should do this before the expansion for a few reasons. I don't think they should do it after. In my opinion, they need to do it before, right? Because here are the scenarios. Do it at the same time, then the expansion's thunder is going to be stolen by all the angry people who have their class nerfed, right? So instead of going, whoa, dude, this turtle is so cool. I'm petting a baby turtle. This is amazing. People are going, ArenaNet, you ruined my class. I hate you, right? Which is obviously not good, right? If they do it after the expansion, then you're going to have like a week of hype. And then what the fuck, ArenaNet, you obliterated my class. I'm uninstalling, right? So that doesn't work either. The only configuration that works is they do it before the expansion, so people get big mad, right? Like, how have you done this? You know, my class is terrible now. It's unplayable. Okay, I'm uninstalling the game. But then they reinstall the game for the expansion, and they forget about their class being nerfed because like, wow, okay, there's a baby turtle. I can pet it. I can pet this cat, right? I can pet this Tengu's bowl cut, right? You know, like all this kind of stuff. It's just great. And I think that is the way it's got to be done. They need to drop a balance patch. If they want to do it, they've got to do it either like ages after the X-Pack drops or before the X-Pack drops. It can't be at the same time.
But you think before is better?
Yeah, I think it has to be before.
So what I'm hearing from you is you think before is better because then people get all the rage out about their class being nerfed. They can go to the forums and complain that they just credit card swiped a staff and now they want a refund because staff Mirage isn't as good, right?
Yes.
Like, okay. But they'll forget about that in a week and then they'll still credit card swipe the new weapon when the new thing is
exactly.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, okay, that's exactly what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, I tend to agree that it probably should happen before, but and to some extent I agree with your rationale, but I think another big reason is because it gives people a chance to sort of theory craft how they're going to play these classes in tandem with the new stuff that's going to be released. And I think that theory craft starting a week before just actually helps build the hype. I think that would be kind of fun, right? Suddenly you've got whole new team comps coming out, right? But you actually don't know what is best in slot until a week later, perhaps, or even more time after that, right?
Interesting.
So that could be interesting.
I don't read my own chat because Grouch actually said in my chat, apparently, that there will not be a balance patch prior to End of Dragons. There will, however, be plenty following it. I'm not gonna lie.
Whoa.
That's a little interesting to me because that means what does that actually mean? Like, this also concerns me because this, to me, is going to mean that a lot of stuff, I think in PvE and World versus World mostly, the End of Dragon specs, assuming they're about the same as the second kind of set of betas that we saw, or rather the final beta, assuming they're about the same, they're going to feel extremely weak. In PvE, they'll also feel weak to the majority of the player base, the exception being the high-end scene. The high-end scene will probably have a lot of value out of them because they do a huge amount of DPS, right? And when you're speedrunning, that's when damage becomes really, really important. But for random plebs, to be honest, it's going to feel very underwhelming. That also concerns me a little bit, right? I'm not going to lie. I'm not a big fan.
I share the same concerns, but mostly because I know that there's been kind of a travesty in the end game scene, right? There's been a lot of, well, particularly for PvE that I know of, and I know that PvP has had its own sufferings, and same with World versus World. But I'm mostly concerned because oftentimes I think that these players that struggle and would perceive the new specs as weak would do so because they aren't the kind of people to theory craft or to benchmark, right? So they don't know the potential or the capabilities of these classes. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, these players suck. No, like I'm in that group, right? Like I don't hardcore theory craft stuff, right? I go look at what other people are doing and then I might put my own little twist on it, but I just don't have time really to go and theory craft like crazy. So I'm curious because I know that there's been a bit of some rustling in the end game scene, particularly for raids and PvE content. For people that are traditionally the ones that would experiment with these new classes, do the benchmarks, put the builds out, I'm wondering how perhaps the absence of some of these people might impact impact the game's initial adoption of the new elite specs.
It's
at least at a high level, because I think average people will play them. I'm just thinking like in raids and stuff, will people not adopt them because they just don't know how to play them?
I think that will actually be a problem. That's a very, very good point. And I think that in a way, strike missions being good and engaging is a big deal for this reason. The hardcore scene definitely in PvE is losing interest. It has been for a long time. Like, I haven't actually thought about that, but you're really, really right to bring that up. Because, of course, through every single metagame that we've had for a long time, there has been this very dedicated group of players that develops all the builds and, you know, develops the rotations and stuff like that. Like, it's entirely possible that that won't be quite as readily available to the community as it has been previously.
So yeah, I think it's actually a big. I think that oftentimes we take for granted the resources that other people freely make for us, right? When content creators go out and they make these build guides and these raid guides and all of this stuff, I think we just become accustomed to that. And I mean, I don't know. I think people will obviously still make these guides and things, but I just know that some of the more prominent figures in the community, at least for raids, are kind of checked out. Right? Or there have been some unfortunate events that have yeeted them from the game, so to speak. So I'm concerned that this will actually have major impacts on information spread. And as a result, this sort of, what is it? I feel like a lot of the information that's spread around when it comes to endgame content is actually just between friends. Like there's a lot of builds. Like I could be wrong about some of this. I had never heard of the Stacks Mirage, like the Staff Axe Mirage build, until I was like talking to some people in Win and stuff. I don't know if it was posted or if it is posted anywhere, but I hadn't heard of it forever, and I think people were spreading it around in between each other far before it ever went on a website. So I think that this just will exacerbate the problem, right? You've got information out there, but it seems like it's unobtainable for the average person that wants to get better. I hear that complaint a lot, and I'm curious if we will see big problems with information dissemination regarding builds, benchmarks, if we don't retain these endgame players.
For sure. This is a big issue, I think, in game modes like PvP as well. I think PvP suffers from this the most, actually.
Oh yeah,
because PvP builds, there are a few places where you can find them, including Hardstuck, by the way. But not really that many. Like the amount of resources that are there are very, very, you know, it's pretty scant, really. And there are some serious concerns, I would say, with PvE actually going that direction. If the strike missions really land well, like hopefully that will alleviate that, particularly the challenge modes. But I think I think you're very right to bring this up. You know, this is something that doesn't get explored very often because, again, it is taken for granted, right? That's a bit of a blind spot there, right? For sure. And if those communities that create these resources aren't interested, or aren't as invested as they were previously, then it might take longer, or those resources may simply not be updated or exist. And you might say, well, someone else is going to replace them. But to be honest, who?
I mean, we actually have a really good case study of this with PvP. When Gods of PvP stopped getting updated, it like eviscerated people's build knowledge in PvP. They're just like, I remember seeing stuff on like Facebook groups and like just all over social media, Reddit. People were asking like, hey, like, where do I get builds? Where do I get builds? Where do I get builds? And suddenly everyone had to be like, oh, like people were playing outdated builds because everyone kept recommending Gods of PvP, but Angels wasn't updating it anymore. So then when Hardstuck didn't have that stuff and people turned to meta battle, but the meta battle builds weren't necessarily the most up to date or the most accurate. There's just this massive rift then between people's understanding of what builds are actually good and the people that knew about that information but weren't sharing it. So it's actually really fascinating. I think that this could actually have a big impact on the game.
Yeah. I guess maybe we are perhaps in a little bit of a bubble here that I think we should acknowledge. For example, do you think that it matters that people know how to play the build if they're just playing open world? Probably not, right?
Oh yeah, open world, like everything's gonna die eventually if you have enough people.
So I think then it's more like, is it just fun to play, right?
Yeah, so it's just like I probably sound horrible when I say this. Whenever people are like, oh, what build should I play in open world? I usually tell people it doesn't really matter. Not in like a snide way, but in like, you should just play whatever the heck you want and enjoy it and have a good time. Unless you're trying to optimize, in which case there are maybe a few things that are better. But for the most part, it's just kind of irrelevant because you're not gonna fail because you're playing a core engineer Condi build. Most likely, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna fail because you don't know how to play that build, or yeah. But yeah, what was the point? What were we gonna talk about?
I don't really know.
I like totally lost my train of thought.
We're just saying that we're all doomed, and that no one's gonna know what to play because all of the hardcore players are quitting the game.
Okay, open world doesn't necessarily matter, but it does matter for PvP world versus world and those other things, right? Like the average casual player it doesn't really matter as much to them. But as soon as somebody tries to make that jump, as soon as somebody goes, huh, I am interested in getting better at the game, then they either like, well, I don't have the resources or the time to go out and spend 100 hours theory crafting to figure out what the best build is and use all these tools to benchmark and blah, blah, blah. I just need somebody that's, it's their hobby to do this, basically, to tell me what to play. And then they go and they can't find that information. Well, what does that do to that rip? It just gets wider, right? Like now suddenly you've got the people that are trying to get into end game content or whatever. It just makes it even more difficult for them. Now, will that even really matter if we have strikes and presumably this sort of difficulty level type stuff going on? But who knows?
Yeah. Strikes are a big question. And this is one of the things that I really noticed wasn't in the launch month update stream thingy, like schedule, is there's no more information about strikes. It's about the kind of the philosophy behind them, like the reward structure, like some more details on that, which I think is really unfortunate. Obviously, we'll find out on the day, right? And I plan to get through all those strike missions and have a pretty good understanding of them and how it all works on day one, right? Would be really, really good. But it's kind of one of those things that I really want to know how it works, and it's a shame that, I don't know, I do trust ArenaNet. To be clear, I trust ArenaNet, but it's one of those things that I think is super important to get right, and I would have loved to have given feedback on it before the final version was in the game, right? Because first impressions matter a lot, right? They really, really do. And this is the thing. Like, ArenaNet, what have they struggled with? Figuring out how they're going to do endgame PvE, right? Like, this has been a year-long battle with, is it raids? Is it fractals? Is it dungeons? Is it strikes? Is it DRMs? No one knows. ArenaNet doesn't know. We don't know. So in my opinion, they need to nail this. Like, the strike missions, it better be good. It better be good, ArenaNet. And it does make me a little uneasy, like not knowing exactly how it's going to work. But I guess we have to have a little confidence in ArenaNet here to make sure they do it right.
Yeah, I mean, being able to test them before I think would have been nice and everything. I just, I don't know. I do worry about that a bit. I mean, again, acknowledging my own bias, like I'm very much an endgame player. I've beat all the challenge modes lots of times, including the hard ones, I guess. I'm not some incredible player, right?
Well,
yeah, well, no. Wait till I finish. No, I don't. I've done it because I put in the effort, right? I've joined pug groups and we like grinded it. I've done prog with different statics, but I'm not some incredible player myself. But at this point, and this just gives me more empathy for the players that are really hardcore in this stuff. At some point, you get to this place where you go, okay, well, what's next? Because for me, I play multiple accounts. I've beat all these raid bosses. I try to challenge myself every once in a while, see if I can do like a little bit more damage or beat the boss a little bit faster. But at some point, I just kind of sit back and I go, okay, well, I need a new challenge. I need something else to do because things are starting to get a little bit stale. Now, I think that the new specs will add a lot to that because suddenly you're engaging with the content in a different way, and I think that's really cool. The balance will help a lot with that as well. But when will that, stop? When will that novelty wear off? How quickly will it wear off? Because you are killing the same bosses that you've killed for 2 years. Plus 5 years. longer, right? Whatever. So when that novelty's gone, what you gonna do? I think it's crucial that they give people something else to do. And if strike missions don't fill that gap well, that's it's not a good thing. And that's why I have hope, because I think that they can do it. I think they can pull it off. I'm especially hopeful because they essentially acknowledged all of the problems with original strikes. They basically called themselves out. They're like, the board structure is not very good. We're going to fix that. They don't have really CM, so we're going to add those. I think that's a really big step in the right direction. The question is, will it deliver? And like you've noted, without any sort of testing or feedback, and I mean, maybe they do have that going on in the back, so we just don't know. They're not necessarily putting that on display. We can't be 100% confident that these are going to fill the gap, and that becomes very troublesome for the end game players that have waited very patiently for any sort of new content.
Yeah, I think that goes back to kind of the roadmap topic as well a little bit, right? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah. What if? Let's think about this hypothetically. What if a month after, so they've released all the strike CMs, that's it, right? You've got all the strike CMs out there. People have all beat them within a few days, or probably it depends on how hard they are. But they'll probably beat them pretty fast, probably like in a day. Once that's all done, what's next? I feel like they have to tell us, right? They have to. What if they were to say something like, all right, we're planning to do 4 new strikes with the next living world, or 2 new.
That's ambitious,
2
buddy.
new strikes. What about 2 new strikes? I think 4 would be pretty ambitious. What if they're like, we're going to do 2 new strikes because the story just naturally has 2 new strikes with the CMs? Do you think people would be okay with that? Or would that be not enough? What is enough?
And that would be okay. Under the assumption that's kind of like raid bosses, right? That's 2 raid bosses every 3 months or so. That's pretty legit. That's pretty sick, I would say. 8 bosses a year. All right.
Well, that's cool. I thought the whole point of transitioning to the strike model was to reuse assets. I thought that was the whole point. So my expectation is, if they're going to do that, then they need to release more regular content. Is it 1 boss, though? 1 boss a quarter? Is that enough? I don't know. I mean, it's more than we've got now.
Well, I think that almost anything would be an improvement, okay? Sorry to be a little toxic there, okay? But, look, I mean, where's the timer? I'm getting the timer. I'm getting this timer right now, Sneb. Key of Adashim, 971 days since its release.
Yeah, but what is enough? That's my point. Like, when I say this, I'm kind of like glancing over at Win, at Snowcrows, at QT, at all of these end game communities, right? And I go, what would be enough for you, right? What is enough? How much content do they need to release to keep people's interest? Is it 1 strike a quarter? Is it 2 strikes? Is it 4 strikes? What is enough? What is doable, right? If they release 1 super hard piece of content that takes people a week to clear, is that enough?
I would say so, yeah. I think that it really comes down to the difficulty. Like, the difficulty is what's important. It needs to be brutal, I think. Like genuine hell, right? Like, you need to have very good execution.
Have they ever released anything like that in Guild Wars 2, though?
Not that. Well, Doom at the time was a serious challenge for good players.
How long did it take people to kill Doom?
Doom CM, it was a week.
Really?
Yeah, it was about 6 days. However, here's the issue. If Doom CM was released now, it would die day 1.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at here. Like, what is hard content?
Yeah, because
how much? Because most people can't kill Doom CM. Is it because I feel like there's a bit of debt here as a result of having not had more content for so long? Like, you've had all these skilled players that have just gotten more skilled, and then you've got players that are relatively fresh, and people just don't engage with that content. So the gap has just been ever increasing between the people that can and can't do it. From my perspective, now I don't have like data to express that really, but it just feels like you've got people that just have this on farm now. So if you release something like Doom CM, you're gonna have a whole lot of players that are like new content. They go to try it, and it would just like absolutely annihilate them, right? But then for all the players that are like really good at the game, they're just gonna kill it within like 2 hours. So
we'll have to see how it's going to be.
How do you balance that? Like how do you actually make content that's really difficult that people aren't going to just give up on as well? Like you can't make content for the 0.1, right?
So here's the problem with this, and I think this really is a bit of a rock and a hard place for ArenaNet. This is a super interesting topic in my opinion. So the issue is that where ArenaNet is right now is that they aren't thinking about making content that's going to keep the top players engaged. They're thinking about creating a system that could theoretically keep the top players engaged, right? If that makes sense. We're not actually at the point where they can start making things targeted at the very, very best players, because raids didn't work out very well. Strikes worked out kind of okay, but it didn't really keep the top players engaged, right? Because they were a little bit too easy. So if you're a top player right now, it's almost got to be like a very delayed, a very, very delayed gratification style meme here, because it's true that the strikes are probably going to be pretty good, like, and more engaging than the current strike missions. They'll be a little bit harder, a bit more to them, because they've been in development for a longer period of time and they're a bit more focused, and they have challenge modes as well. That's really good, obviously. But the issue is that the hardcore audience is just not viable for ArenaNet right now. They have zero interest in going after this right now because it's simply not profitable. Like, raids are not profitable for them to go after. It's not a good investment for them to actually attack. So realistically, we're at the beginning of the potential hardcore redemption arc for Guild Wars 2. I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I mean?
Oh yeah, I do. But I selfishly, I kind of had like a funnel to this, because what I was going to bring up is that Dragon response missions actually attempted to do this in a sense, right? They attempted to appease a hardcore crowd by adding, in effect, 4 challenge modes, or however many there are, right? They imposed a timer, and then they put boons, and they put more enemies, and right? They tried to make it so that they're like, okay, maybe you're up for a challenge. You want to do the CM, but you're not going to do all the CMs. You're just going to do this one. So in a sense, they made like an easy, medium, hard, right?
That's not the same
thing,
though, right? That's not the same.
Yeah, but the thing, like that, I mean, that's how you could potentially do it. But the problem is that that's still not hard enough, right? No matter what, that's not hard enough. It was not the challenge.
Well, okay, this is kind of what I was getting at here. The problem is that if they made something actually hard in Guild Wars 2, there would be less than 10 to 20 guilds that could clear it in the entire game.
Oh yeah,
and they're not going. They're not going to do that now. They are not going to make Mythic. That's never going to happen, right? Well, not never, but not now, right? I agree with you that the challenge mode CMs will probably be easy if you're really good at the game, right? But that is okay, because honestly, making it hard for the actual good players in guilds who are like at genuine top-end PvE players, it's just not a viable thing. That is a waste of development resources. And I will say that as someone who would like something really, really brutal, right? I'm in that category of really amazing
players. I'm going to call you out, but I think it's copium here. Okay, so here's the issue, is that you can say that there's a redemption arc and whatever, but the problem is that if you never make the hardcore content, then all of the hardcore players are going to move on, like they already are, right? So then what's the point in making the hardcore content if 6 months down the line, you've never made any content? They're all gone anyway. Right? Like, this is a chicken and the egg situation, right? What do you do first? Because if you don't make the super hard content that players are like, oh my gosh, this is impossible, but then they look and they see these 10 guilds doing it, maybe that pushes people to try to do it. I don't know, right? But the problem the problem lies in that if they don't make that, then Win quits, Snow Crows quits. All of these are like, there's never going to be any content that's actually challenging to us. So why bother, right?
So I guess what I'm getting at here is, what would you have ArenaNet do? Would you really have them make content that is genuinely tuned for the Cucks and Win? And by the Cucks, I mean Win, by the way, guys. Win and SC, right? Would we really make content tuned at those players? Because if
you do like one level down, right?
But then it'll be too easy. Then it'll be too easy.
Well, too easy for that. Like, yeah. See,
do you see what I mean?
Like,
right?
for me, it's very difficult to understand like what would be hard for Win, because I watch Win and Snow Crows and all of these teams, and I'm just like blown away. Right? They just like annihilate everything. Right? Like they make it look so easy that I can't actually imagine an encounter that's really hard for them in Guild Wars 2, because we've just never had that. Right? I have nothing to position that with. So what would that be? Like what would make something hard enough in Guild Wars 2, but also not completely isolate all of the other player base? But do you even want, like, do you care about that? Do you want to just put some like super challenging thing in the game and make it really hard so that only a few people can do it? There are some games that do this, right? Like look at Inferno in old school RuneScape. That thing's stupid hard and takes forever to get to, and you make one mistake and it's over, and people grind that thing forever. Is it okay to do that? It's a massive risk, because I think a lot of players would be really frustrated by it, right? Like really frustrated by it. The other thing is that Guild Wars 2 is a team-focused game, whereas old school RuneScape is solo, so that's also a bit different. The challenges associated with getting into that hardcore content in Guild Wars 2 are greater, I would say, in some ways, because they don't just depend on you, they depend on other people. So I don't know. I don't really have a good answer to this. I just think it's like a fascinating thing to think about, because you can do it so that, you know, you slowly work up to this, but the consequence is that those people that would eventually play the harder content have already left because they're not getting what they need. And then at that point, is there much reason to make the hardcore content? Then you've got why don't you just put the hardcore content out and see what happens and see if people adjust? But then you're isolating a ton of people.
Well, that's what I mean. I think you've got to walk before you can run. I think that adding something that's genuinely brutal is something that you'd see in the future. I don't think you're not gonna see like Cameron just like sadistically torturing players with this like horrific boss, right? Like on launch. I don't think that's very likely. But if the strike missions do really well and people engage with them and they're kind of like a viable type of content, then I think ultimately the way to go about this would be to add another difficulty setting. I think having these massive jumps in difficulty, it just makes that one of them kind of pointless, right? Like, you know, in World of Warcraft, you have normals, heroics, and then mythic, right? Realistically, heroic is what challenge mode is in Guild Wars 2. There's no mythic option in Guild Wars. And I know we're kind of complaining about like, oh, we want difficulty. And it give us difficulty. They were like, oh, it's not good enough, right? But to an extent, it is.
I don't know that difficulty settings really are exactly what we're talking about. Like,
I think that is exactly what we're talking about.
Well, no, I mean, you could add these difficulty settings, but the issue is that with the difficulty, because they do add difficulty settings. That's what I was getting at. They in a sense, they did that with Dragon Response missions.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be granular enough, right? Like
yeah, but it's not good enough. Like it's not hard enough. No matter what, it's not hard enough. And even if you made something that was super, super hard, it would still isolate so many players. People still complain about it. So like, how do you win, right? Well, how do you win in this situation?
I would say you win by making challenge mode, again, kind of that heroic level difficulty, right? And then if it does really well, then you can start thinking about nightmare mode, right? For example, so we have challenge mode, then we have nightmare mode after that. That could be something that could even be added to old content. For example, you know, we know that my Trin is a strike mission, right? So she's going to release with a challenge mode. Awesome. Great. That's going to be fun. It's going to be engaging. It's, you know, maybe it's going to keep you occupied for like a day, right? Whatever, to beat it. Okay, maybe in the future, then you actually add Mitrin Nightmare Mode that has an additional mechanic. Like a really big thing in Mythic WoW is that they'll usually have an extra mechanic. There's a Mythic mechanic. The numbers will be higher, more HP, more damage, more punishing mechanics, right? So the enrage is tighter, like blah, blah, blah. The healing cap is tighter, right? Like the healing checks are tighter. And then there'll be something else, right? There'll be an extra thing. Right? And that's how a lot of challenge modes work now. Doom has the Ender's Echo, new mechanic. Demos, you can't heal Saul, and like Saul can't help you in any way, right? Kadim, you got the big bouncy balls, right, that one-shot you, right? There's an added mechanic, but you want something above that again. Like, if you really want to have that world's first progression where it's going to take days to take down a boss, it would have to be brutal. I would say that, because people were asking about this, so I'll answer this very directly here. If you wanted to make Doom CM a lot harder, just double the health. If you wanted to make Kadim, and make more mechanics as well, the mechanics have to be more punishing, and he has double hit points. Like Kadim CM, you could honestly double or even triple the hit points of Kadim 1 CM, and now you're talking. Like, make the mechanics more intense. Because here's the thing about DPS checks, guys. DPS checks force you to play aggressively. One of the really big problems with Guild Wars 2 PvE right now is that you're unnerfed, right? So you can always play the most overpowered defensive carry setup, and you'll never get punished for dropping DPS. It's never going to happen. For example, world's first challenge mode on Wing 7, which was done by Snowcrows, that was done with Heal Scourge, right? And a second healer. Why was that the case? Well, it's because they didn't need the damage, right? And you'll see this across all of the world's firsts in Guild Wars 2. You just overstack defensive support, so none of the mechanics matter. DPS checks prevent this from being possible. If you're forced to run a very aggressive setup, then your mistakes matter way more, and the mechanics matter more by default as a result of that, because you have less healing, less boons, less recovery, less support. So one of the reasons why you can't really do this is because if you did do this, then 99% of the player base wouldn't be able to clear it, right? A really good example of this was actually Chaos Chronomancer. Like, Chaos Chrono was this really overpowered build in PvE that allowed you to basically have a Chronomancer give you every boon in the game permanently. And when I say every, I mean every, including resistance, actually, and stability. But when this build got nerfed, it actually, like, locked a lot of people out. Like, the raid population noticeably dropped when this build got nerfed, because it hard locked people out of the game, right? Because they couldn't beat the content anymore. So imagine if you did that, but oh yeah, you're only allowed one healer, and you have to run Seize the Moment Chrono, and you have to run like ultra aggressive DPS builds, and you have to do a really good rotation. Okay, great. Now, three guilds in the entire game can actually clear this content regularly. You've just made a piece of content that less than 100 people in your MMO can beat, right? And in a game like WoW and Final Fantasy, that makes sense, right? Not only because the world's first race is huge, right? It will probably get 500,000 to 1 million viewers when there's a new raid out in WoW. And, similarly big numbers, like, not quite as much as WoW, but big numbers on Final Fantasy as well, in terms of like how many people are going to watch that. But also you can also outgear it, particularly in WoW, right? Like, as time goes on, you're going to get better items that basically makes the raid easier over time. That's a big thing. In Guild Wars 2, that's not going to happen. If you don't get good enough, you'll never clear it, right? Like, if you don't get good enough to beat Veil Guardian will gatekeep you forever. Like, literally, the heat death of the universe will have happened, and if you can't do that boss, you still can't do it, right? There's no level 90, right? There's no better gear that you can get. You have no choice but to get good enough. So, this is why I say...
Really what this comes down to is, like, the philosophy of, is it okay to have content in the game that people cannot complete? Right, and I think traditionally Guild Wars 2 has very little of that. Right, they really don't like putting stuff in the game that people can't do, because as soon as there's content that people can't do, then it doesn't feel inclusive, or I don't know. It's just not their. It's not their mentality. There's very few things in the game that they have designed so that people can't do it, right? or yeah, or that would gatekeep anybody. And the reason I know this, or the reason that I think this is kind of interesting for me is I've had issues in different static raid groups that I've created where it's evident that after 2 months, if you have somebody that's still doing 15k DPS and they're a dedicated DPS player, that they've either hit their ceiling or they're not putting in effort,
Okay.
right?
Forgive me. I think my point maybe isn't coming across here. I'm not saying that it's not okay to do this. In fact, I think it is okay to do this. I think stuff like Mythic and Ultimate, or Savage, Heroic, whatever, these are amazing. I think that ArenaNet is on the right track, but we're at the beginning of the road. I do not think it is viable right now for ArenaNet to add a hell mode to the game. It's viable to add challenge mode, but I do not think it is viable to add an ultra punishing extreme difficulty setting because there is no market for that. I think the return on investment for developing such a thing would be bad, or non-existent even. And the challenge mode is much more appealing as it is right now. That type of like middle of the road difficulty, because it will be aspirational to people without seeming completely impossible, and generate a certain level of excitement around it, like, and that sort of hopefully satisfy people a little bit. No. But I just don't think
you'll clear that content on day one, though.
That content, I will make a very, very strong stance here. Every single Ender Dragon Strike mission will die day one. Yes. And challenge mode as well.
I suck at the game. I'll kill all of them in probably day one too.
Correct.
Right? Like that's
yes.
Like, but that's kind of what I'm saying, right? It's like such a weird situation because they call it a challenge mode, but I really wish I had exact stats. It's not challenging to you or me necessarily. Like it's more challenging to me than it is to you. But there are people that it'll be very challenging compared to me.
Yes.
It's super subjective. And so the challenge, it's just weird, right? Like I don't even know how to express it. It's just like a strange thing because whenever they talk about challenge modes, to me, it's not really that challenging, but at the same time, I recognize that it is challenging for majority of the players. So you make this challenging, this aspirational content, but the difficulty, I think, and I don't envy them for this, is how do you make aspirational content that when people go to YouTube or Twitch, they just see people eliminated on day one. But then they go to do it and they like can't do it. Like it's so weird. I don't know.
We're talking about the wrong thing here, right? Because we're talking about this from a player perspective, which is all well and good, but I actually don't think that's the relevant conversation here. The relevant conversation is the developer perspective, right? It's not how are we going to make this work for the players? It's how are we going to make this work for ArenaNet? Right? Because raids, we know it's not viable. Challenging 10-player content isn't viable for ArenaNet. That is a fact. We know that. That is true.
Yeah,
what strike missions?
ROI.
What strike missions are is an attempt to make that work. Right? If it does work, then I think we can talk about, is it now viable to make this extreme mode, right? And make this really, really challenging. And something that's really going to push players that will take them days or even weeks to clear, depending on the skill level of the group, the amount of time investment, et cetera, right?
Yes, but my problem is I don't see a path there. I don't see the path that you're talking about. That path seems really wishy-washy to me because you're saying like, oh, well, like eventually players will get better, but we've already seen that they don't, right? Like no, nothing to do with that, actually. Nothing to do with players getting better. Like, that is never part of any assertion that I ever make, because I think that will never happen. Wait. So right? let me reframe and see if I understand, and then fill in the gaps for me.
Yep.
What you're suggesting is that they create these strike CMs because it produces the ROI that ArenaNet needs to see with end game content, and then slowly they can build more challenging content as they see that ROI. Is that what you're saying, or am I totally off base here?
Essentially, yes. I think you could start to see that stuff, and that could be part of the conversation once strike missions are economically viable, being developed alongside Living Story, and it is generating a return for the company. It is worth them doing that, right?
So what I'm saying is that I don't see how they make that jump. I don't see how they get the ROI and can make more difficult content beyond beyond like a strike CM, right? Because I think what you're suggesting is that over time they could make more difficult content. But I just have a hard time seeing that path. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's that I don't see how that's going to happen because, well, I mean, like I feel like it's requisite that players become more knowledgeable about the game in order to do that. Are you suggesting that by doing this slowly over time, that players will naturally become better at the game because they'll have...
No. Players won't get... The average skill level of Guild Wars 2 won't change in the same way that Mythic WoW existing does not make players better at it. Where if you want to
get... Why would they play... Like, why would they make harder content then?
So the ROI...
I don't see how the ROI will be there because the average player needs to be able to complete the content for the ROI to be there.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit different because in general you can make like the hard mode and then strip it down, or like add a little bit more on top of the challenge mode to get the ROI. But in my opinion, the ROI with anything that is so extreme that almost no players can do it, it's like true aspirational content, it has to be a meta ROI. It's not good enough that, oh yeah, like it's, you know, Snow Crows are really hyped about this. That's a big ROI. No, that means nothing. Sorry. And it means nothing that I really like it as well. I'm only one player. Like, the only reason why stuff like Mythic and Ultimates are justified is pretty much because of the buzz it's going to create around the game. And until that scene is more cemented and more ingrained, realistically, it's never really going to be worth it for ArenaNet to kind of put in the testing, put in the hours to actually develop something like that. Because again, yeah, if you want to have like ultra aspirational, like mega hard stuff, it has to be this, it's got to generate buzz. It's got to get viewers. It's got to get the game's name out there, right? It's got to get people excited about this type of content. And right now we aren't there, right? I mean, raid tournaments work pretty well, right? You know, people like to see that stuff. So that's a bit of an ROI.
But wait. So what I'm saying though is that how long will that take to get to the point where let's say some of the end game raid guilds quit because they're just like, there's just nothing here for us right now. Like, we didn't get any new raids. There's no plan for new raids. The strike CMs aren't difficult enough, so we're kind of bored. So they move on to a different game. How long will it take for them to, you know, sort of ramp up to that point where they are making that super aspirational content like you're discussing? If assuming that, you know, all goes well with the strike CMs, that they can sort of clip that up. And is it too late then? That's the whole point I'm trying to make, is like there's sort of a sense of urgency here, because if we'll lose a lot of knowledge. We've already discussed this a little bit, but we're losing a lot of knowledge if people leave. And so it makes it even harder to justify making content that few people will be able to beat. I don't know.
It ain't easy.
Maybe I'm not making sense. It's just like, to me, it's a very cloudy path to making content that would give even the slightest challenge to these end game teams. And if you have to do it over a long period of time, it feels like it's too late.
Maybe, but this is kind of what I mean about the rock and a hard place. I don't see the alternative here. You know,
that's the problem. I don't either.
I think that, you know, this is the way it has to be. Like, this is the gamble that has to be made here, is that strikes work out really well, and it gets players engaged. It generates a bit of hype around 10-player content. It's more accessible. It's a new face on that stuff. And hopefully it's enough to keep, you know, some of the hardcore players about the place. If not, you know, I really hate to pull this excuse now because it's such a Guild Wars 2 cult thing to say, but I genuinely do believe that a lot of the super hardcore players are genuinely extremely attached to Guild Wars 2 as a game. And if there was a time where it was on the upswing in terms of hardcore content, they would come back. You see this with PvP players. PvP players, they cannot quit this game, right? I've seen many people try, right? They always fail. They always come back. No matter how hard they try to leave, there is something about Guild Wars 2 that has a bit of an X factor. Maybe it's because they, you know, honestly, it's not Guild Wars 2. It's about any MMO, right? Like, people can't quit WoW. They probably can't quit Final Fantasy either, right? They can't get BDO, right? People get stuck in the game, right? They can't disengage from this. You know what I mean? But yeah, there you go. Yeah, wait. Grouch is watching TeaTime. He's linked this meme. He's sweating right now. He wants to unleash. He wants to unchain his power right now. Time to call him up.
It's just I'm like, look, I want to make it very clear. Like, I actually really think it's possible. I'm just playing really hardcore devil's advocate here. Like, I think it can be done. It's just hard for me to see that roadmap. I think that's such a challenge, and it's really I would love to like get in the heads of the devs and the strategy people at ArenaNet, figure out like how they're planning to do this content over time. It's such a tricky. There's so many stakeholders here. There's so much at play that balancing all of this and keeping all these people engaged makes it very difficult to navigate anything, right?
Well, this is kind of what I was getting at about it being a fairly kind of long road and what's going to happen after End of Dragons. I genuinely believe that, you know, Guild Wars 2 is going to have to rebuild itself, right? And you're right when you say that, yeah, you know, is it a little bit too late? Is it a bad situation? Honestly, yes, it is. You know, I've been speaking with some GVG guys recently. A lot of the GVG players are not super amped, right, about what's going on because of a few bugs with Edge of the Mist and also the new Elite Specializations. Yeah, the PvP players are pretty lukewarm. I'll quote Boyce yesterday. Okay, he said, motivation is at an all-time low right now. Okay, yeah, it ain't good. We're in trouble, right? These are some of the most dedicated players to the game saying my motivation is at an all-time low. Yeah, like 1 month before an expansion? Yeah, that ain't good, right? That's not good.
I mean, I sort of described the same thing when on Coffee and Games when you and I were talking with Xandri, right? I was like, I'm just kind of like tired. Like, I just don't really know. And you know what I've done the last few weeks is sort of rated about half as much as I normally do because I'm just tired. Like, I thought maybe I need to step away a little bit so that I can appreciate it a little bit more when End of Dragons comes out. So I've sort of taken it a bit easy, but that's not necessarily the thing you want right before the expansion release. You'd hope that everyone would go wicked hard, right? And they're like posting on social media, they're like wicked hype. But I've kind of been like, maybe I've gone too hard for too long, and I need to like step back. And I wonder if a lot of people are feeling that way. They were like so amped for EOD coming out in like what they thought might be September, October, November, that now there's like 3 months before and or there's like this extra 3 months where people are sort of like fizzling a little bit, right? So I'm trying to conserve my energy. And do I need to get a life? Don't worry, I have two, IRL and in Guild Wars 2. Boom, there it is.
Oh man,
I can buy more lives too if you just like. You know, I think there's like a link below or something.
Oh,
you can support the stream and you can also buy an account that just gives you like another.
Buy the game. Buy the game using my referral link, guys. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready to jam now. We've been talking this for a while. And before we get assassinated by Grouch's strike team for daring to go near this topic, I think a good way to wrap this up would be my comment on this. Now, I know this is going to be a really tough sell. I'm going to get Omega Lord for this. The chat, I will face social consequences for this take, but realistically, it's going to be a while before, I know you've heard this one before. It's going to be a while before a lot of these systems really get in place. And if you are like a giga hardcore PvE player, then yeah, I don't think Guild Wars 2 is going to be in a position to deliver the type of content you want as an ultra hardcore player for a pretty long time. That's basically what I'm getting at with this entire kind of spiel that we just went through. That is my take. I think that it's possible that raids could even come back. But again, raids coming back would be contingent on 1, strike missions, 10-player content doing well, and 2, an easy mode implementation similar to strikes being added to raids. And probably 3, some kind of main storyline integration, so asset reuse, going into raids as well. Like, those 3 things would need to happen. I think it's possible, though. I do. In fact, you know what? I always say this. I will happily put money on any of my positions that I hold. I would actually put money like $50 on there being another raid eventually in Guild Wars 2. I know that's a very easy bet to make because like,
man, come on,
could be in 5 years.
So open-ended.
Right? It's maybe a bit too open-ended, but I think there will be another raid. I'd be pretty confident they will at least try and bring back raids. They'll try to do something with raids, probably within like, I don't know, like a year or two. Like, I know that's not, it's not copium gamers, okay? It's logic and reason, okay? Logic and reason. Right there. $50, we won't have a raid by the end of 2023. Yeah, I'd take that. I would actually take that. By the end of 2023, yeah, that's 2 years, right? Yeah, I'll take that bet. You know what? We're doing it live here on the stream. Me versus Isa. Deal.
Isa's taking
Grouch, don't let me down. I'm giving you a cut, bro. Right? Seriously, Grouch, let's go. I'll give you 50-50. I know that's a lot of money, okay? Grouch.
I have to call it a raid, by the way. It cannot be a start.
He lives in the office, right? He lives inside an old PC case. That $25 is going to go a long way, right?
See, Isa's willing to pay the $50 to get the raid, right? So, like, this is a win-win for Isa.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, like I said, it's just going to be a while, to be honest. And I know people have heard that before, and I know that is going to be really frustrating to hear, but I think that is the most realistic take that you can have on the situation. And I don't blame players for being a little bit disengaged and not being willing to wait. I think that's fair. However, I do think that players are sufficiently attached to the game that they would come back. For example, if there was a new raid, if there was a new raid at the end of 2023, you're telling me that SC and Win wouldn't come back? Yeah, you're goddamn right they'd come back, for sure. Even if they do end up, like, really quitting the game, right? For whatever reason. They'll come back for that, 100%. So, yeah. Like I said, it's a tough spot. Like, you know... But, anyway, this is what... Doesn't everyone agree on this? Doesn't everyone agree that in terms of, like, the more hardcore stuff, Guild Wars 2 has been in a really rough spot for a long time? So, that, to me, it just doesn't seem like a very surprising...
Yeah, can I add like a twist of positivity here?
Boom.
You know, one thing that I've really enjoyed the last month or so are the speed clears, like the wing 1 to 7. I've actually thought that has been content to watch. I've watched a ton of different people attempting this, theory crafting it, like live Discord comms. Like, we need more of that in Guild Wars 2. It is actually so fun. I've just been jumping stream to stream, watching different people try that. And I think that's really, really cool. I hope that we can take that kind of momentum and put it into the Strike CMs so that people want to finish it faster. I actually think that it's okay if something isn't super, 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 super hard. If there's sort of value and challenge associated with trying to clear it faster. And I think that we often ascribe that value as a community. And so if we can continue the momentum we have with being like, wow, like, look at how they did this, and put that into something like the Strike CMs, I think that'll be pretty cool. I look, this is gonna be like classic TeaTime thing, but if there was something in the game that was like, you cleared this the fastest this quarter or something, then man, that would be so cool. I think people would put more effort into that type of stuff. Just like there's value in being like the monthly automated tournament winner, right? Imagine Strike leaderboards. That would be sick, right? They already do this kind of thing for PvP. Imagine if we had that in PvE. That would be so cool. But even if we don't get something official like that, we have some momentum in the community. We've ascribed some value into this whole like clear wings 1 to 7 as fast as possible thing. People have been putting rewards on the line. We just need to keep doing that sort of thing with the content that we receive. I think that would be the best next option, so to speak.
I mean, definitely. I don't... Okay, right. Now, Sneb just gave a positive take. I've got to balance it out. Oh, you know what? Okay, look, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a leak, okay? Do you know what I actually want to do at some point?
Leak?
Oh, yeah. I want to do like a Dooma TeaTime. I want to get people on TeaTime who like actually hate Guild Wars 2. You know, I want to get Georges on. I want to get Rocker on. Like people who who actually hate the fucking game, right? Like with every... That would be insane. Yeah. I just want, like, think how funny that would be. I think it's important to listen to the other side. Yeah, I want to listen to people who actually hate Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, see, look, people, you think I hate the game? I like the game. You should see what happens when you go Doom or TeaTime. People will like make personal insults and like get nasty.
Oh man, it'll be great. It'll be so good. Yeah, Asmongold on TeaTime. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That would be funny. I think that would I want to post that on the subreddit, right? I want to get people on who genuinely don't like the game and just post that on Reddit and just watch it explode, right? It'll be extremely funny actually. It'll be good. But here's my take. Do you know what the problem with strike missions are? Is that they don't have trash events. That sounds like a really weird thing to say, but a lot of the really interesting gameplay from the speedrun stuff isn't actually on the bosses. The bosses are interesting with like the super risky and aggressive strats you can do, but what really gets people excited is actually the movement around. And this is where I think strike missions...
Or not Freezy. What's it called? Why did I say Freezy? You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, Freezy. You do mean Freezy. I think.
Well, yeah, I guess Freezy too. But what's the Icebeard construct? Is that what is it called? The one
the
like the basically. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah,
it's not quite the same though, right? Like a raid instance is huge, right? They are massive. They're bigger. They're as big as open world maps sometimes, right? Like Wing 6 is huge. Like Wing 7 is massive. And there is that element that will be difficult to replace. It kind of won't scratch the same itch. Like I said, like strike missions to me are they're almost like the intermediate. They're the stopgap form of PvE content until it becomes viable to do something else. I mean, maybe it stays like this forever. There is that possibility as well. It's which will be fine, but I think you will lose something if you don't have raids. Like raids are interesting for a very specific reason. They're like raids are a lot like dungeons version 2, like particularly when you play them at a high level. Like dungeons being incredibly movement focused and very low boss focus, whereas raids have boss focus and movement focus combined.
So what if they were to make every strike kind of like Freezy? Or what if even better yet, what if they were to make it optional, right? So that there's the pre-event that's optional.
That isn't good enough, right? And I know we're getting really, really picky here, but I'm just speaking from a purely competitive standpoint, as in imagine we're running a tournament for this. That isn't good enough. Because if you have only one boss in the instance, then you have one movement section, one boss section. That actually isn't enough. Like the reason why it gets exciting with some of these bosses, like with Wing, I think Wing 2 is a really good example because it can be done so fucking fast, right? Like actually insane. Like how fast you can do Wing 2 with all the movement tricks and like pre-event clears. Is because it has multiple sections that you have to plan for and strategize for, while also dealing with a multi-stage like boss encounter as well. Like that's what makes it really interesting. Like different compositions that will work throughout the entire raid wing, like where you can relog, where you're going to put portals, how you're going to split up and do the pre-events. If you wanted to do that with a strike mission, you would have to have multiple bosses in the same strike mission and have multiple pre-events in between bosses. And then congratulations, you've just made a raid. And to be clear, guys, I'm not saying they should do this. I am describing the requirements from the perspective of the speedrunning community, right? So just to be super clear about what I'm actually explaining there. It's not what I think ArenaNet should do or what it needs to do. I don't think, realistically, that's not going to happen. And I think strike missions will be fine for the vast majority of the player base, which in my opinion is the major target right now, is to make something that works for everyone as much as possible. But again, from a speedrun perspective, strikes will not scratch the same itch as fractals, dungeons, or raids.
Yeah, part of me wonders why they didn't just... Well, I kind of understand why, but... Like, what if you could just select the boss you wanted to fight in the raid? Right? Because, I mean, you could basically make a raid... Right? So, okay, let's take this back. Imagine all the strikes you've got right now, but they're all just like in one map or something, right? Like so it's like a raid. But when you go to the portal, you can still select which boss you want to start at. Isn't that just the best of both worlds? Isn't that just like perfect?
Well, yes, but I mean, the reason they're going to strikes isn't because of that. It's because they want to make them easier. Like I do agree that would be, in my opinion, funnily enough, if we were going to talk about systems that would need to happen to bring raids back, yes. Arbitrary opening of any boss you want, yes. that is definitely one of the components that raids need to kind of become relevant again, I think. And also multiple rewards per week as opposed to hard weekly lock, probably also not good as well, for sure. Yes.
Okay, so let's assume that we have these new strikes that are coming out, and they have fairly challenging modes. You now throw them all in one map, but you can select which boss you start at. Would that appease all people?
Yes, but now you've made a raid.
Well, yeah, but now you're just rebranding it. You're just calling it strikes.
Well, the thing is that that's not how strikes work either. Like this, mechanically, that's not how it works. Because strike missions are going to be from the story. They're going to be from separate instances of the story. So you can't put them in sequence because they aren't in sequence. Because that's the limitation of the reused component of what a strike mission is.
What if you had like portals between each thing in the same map? And I don't know, I'm really stretching it here, but the point is, I feel like there would be some kind of middle ground. Is it perfect? No, but there's got to be something that would work for everybody.
Well, I mean, if there are portals between them, I mean, isn't that really weird?
No, like I'm thinking like fractals. You know how fractals, there's like little where you like will go to like another island or whatever. There's like one fractal in particular where you like you walk and there's like 3 portals, but it's still on the same map. I don't know.
Well,
point
yeah,
is,
so you could have it
hard to
you could move seamlessly between them, but at that point you're getting into the weird zone, right? Like that means you could technically play the strike missions out of order, right? Or like you could beat them before you beat the relevant. You could get to them before the relevant part of the story. I don't know. I think that's super weird. Like at that point, realistically, I think that I'm on Team ArenaNet here. Okay, Team ArenaNet, which is get strike missions, make them work. Okay, and then you can start thinking about the other areas of PvE. And to be honest, look, people are already going to complain about us talking about this, so we need to run away now. Okay.
Indeed,
this is one of the banned topics. This is one of the forbidden topics on TeaTime.
It's I don't know. It's like it's a tough situation because you have needs from everybody.
It is, yeah. For example, you need to beat Keep Construct.
Yeah, for some reason Keep Construct is like the hardest boss in the game, by the way. For some reason, we talked a little bit before about like knowledge lost. I think most people don't understand that even though it's a Condi meta, there are a few bosses where it is just objectively better to play power because of how the base toughness works on the bosses.
Mm-hmm.
An example of that is Veil Guardian.
Like case.
Yeah, and bursty bosses, right? So, but there's 2 in particular that I'm thinking of that are just like really obviously power focused, right? 36% more damage, big, and that's Veil Guardian and Keep Construct, I believe. I believe it's both of those that have like a similar lower toughness base. So as a result, strike damage does more. You want to play power. I went into, I don't know. People just, I don't know why unless you had to play Condi at Keep Construct, I don't know why you would. Unless you're, memeing a little bit or you're actually trying to get the merges to do that like funny Scourge epi bounce thing. I just don't see why you would play Condi unless you had to. It's still totally doable. There's nothing like inherently like, oh, you actually can't play Condi. But if you were given a choice, I don't know why you would unless you just like felt like it or like didn't have any other builds, right?
You just want to do it. You just want to play that build. It's good.
Yeah. My issue then is like, if you're really struggling at that boss, why would you continue to make a choice that's putting you at a disadvantage? Unless you're doing like some challenge or something, right?
Well, you know what's really weird though about that is that I would actually argue that the easiest way to beat KC would absolutely be to stack Scourges.
And then just like epi bounce everything.
Well, you can just epi. Well, you're never gonna have trouble killing them.
You could just epi to kill the spirits.
You're never gonna get merges because you're gonna insta kill the spirits. And you can just do like 3 orbs, and you'll easily phase it with Scourges. So, I mean, you could just do that. And you have a billion barriers, like you have 20k HP, you're never going to die. I'm pretty sure if you're ever struggling with the boss, Scourge Brute Force is almost always the answer, because it just brute forces everything.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting to me because power has such an advantage at those fights. There's nothing wrong with playing Condi, but from my perspective, I'm always trying to help people get the kill, right? I think people need the context here. I'm often doing training or I'm leading a situation where people are progging a little bit and maybe they're struggling with this boss. So for my context, it's like, how do we kill the boss? Now, for me, the best way to kill the boss is to have people have a 36% damage bonus. Because if their DPS isn't quite there, then their rotations aren't perfect, then they're still going to do more damage on average than they would with Condi. So I think, okay, well, like, let's do this. But I think a lot of people don't understand that about the boss, and it just puts you in a weird situation when you join groups and they're all playing Condi, but they're not stacking Scourges, that's for sure. And they're failing over and over again. And you're like, hey, like, if we want to do more damage here because we're not killing the spirits fast enough, I think it would be a good idea if we played power. I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. But then everyone's like, I don't get it, bro. Like, why would we do that? It's just like a really interesting situation.
Yeah. And it's only gonna get worse when every player who's hardcore quits the game.
Yeah, I learn a lot from like the members of Win and Snow. Like I ask a lot of questions when I'm in their streams and whatnot, and I learn a lot. So I'm nervous because that's how I get most of my information that I then share with others.
Do we have anything else we want to talk about with End of Dragons? Because we had that got intense. That was a big discussion there about like the consequences, the consequences of End of Dragons. Yeah. We got anything else? We covered a lot of stuff so far, but is there anything that we missed out? Do you think? Did we miss anything?
That we missed out. Well, I mean, we lightly touched on the whole cat apocalypse, I guess, yeah. But
that was pretty funny.
Rip the cat. That was violent and aggressive, but it's okay. Like everyone forgives Connor for that, right? I don't know. I guess for me, there's that underwater boss. We briefly mentioned that. What do you think that is?
Oh, this is interesting.
Is it a world boss?
Yeah, seeing that really does make me interesting about the giant. There's like a giant fish. Now, there are two options with it. One, it could actually be an underwater world boss, which would be a first, I believe. There are obviously some underwater events, but never like a big underwater meta event, which would introduce underwater combat. And that would semi-make sense, by the way, because the siege turtle actually has direct applications underwater. You sink down and you can fire your siege turtle mortars at stuff from walking along the bottom. But the other option is that the fish will like swallow you, and then you actually kind of fight inside it on land, right? Like, you get teleported to like a inside of the fish zone, a bit like Triple Trouble, and fight there. It could honestly be both as well. Bear that in mind. It could be like some people have to stay outside and do stuff and pelt the fish, and some people get eaten by the fish and have to do something inside the fish.
Yeah, you know what? Like, this is going to be a really unpopular take, but I kind of look, underwater combat feels kind of bad at times, right? It's not very polished, and it's just not their focus, and that's okay. There's not a lot of underwater stuff. Though I still think that going underwater for some mechanics and things like that, it would actually be kind of fun. And like an open world meta event, I don't really see the harm in having something completely underwater. It's a meta event. Like it's not going to be the most difficult content in the game. Though I actually think an instanced version of that would be really intriguing because all of the strategies would change when you're underwater, right? Because there's some things that are just way more powerful underwater than others. So I think that could actually be quite intriguing. But I've always had this vision of like, what if they were to do, and I recognize that this is a bit of a lofty idea and that some people will really hate this, but I've always teased the idea of having a portion of like a raid event that splits up the group and requires that some people like dive underwater to go press a button or something. So imagine Largos, but like you're slowly sinking. And the only way to stop sinking, so you're not jumping platform to platform, you're just sinking slowly. But the only way to stop that is there's 3 buttons underwater, and you need 3 people to go and touch these buttons at the same time every couple minutes or something, right?
Open world.
And so, oh, what do you mean? What?
I mean, the fish can't be that complicated. People are going to struggle with that, dude.
Oh yeah, I'm just positing like that would be like interesting, right? If you were to do that in an instance content. But if this is open world, I wonder if they'll just like if they will introduce something like the worm, right? Triple Trouble, where you do have to go inside the fish and battle, right?
It would be pretty cool.
I think that could be kind of fun. I don't know. It's just would change things up. And like,
yeah,
I think any sort of shift or any sort of change in the way that we interact with the game, even if it's just underwater that we haven't interacted with very much or hardly at all in the last however long, I think that could just be something different to do, right?
No, I think it'll be good. I hope that they really go hard on some of these open world bosses. They look pretty cool. You know, they showed this Jade Behemoth thing in New Kaineng. I think that's going to be a really fun boss. I can't wait to fight that. The giant fish could be cool as well, and whatever else they have. There's like there's like a Jade Maw tentacled hentai monster also that's going to appear in the Jade Sea. Probably some big bosses in Ekavald Wild as well. I mean, like, it's going to be great. What I really hope to see is more stuff like Dragonstorm, though, right? Like, I really like that. I like the idea that I can get my guild and we can have a private instance and do a boss anytime we like, right? I really like that a lot. It's just, you can do it anytime. You can work as a team, right? It promotes you playing well to get it done quicker, right? The skill element is there. You can coordinate properly. I think that's fun, right? Or at least something like the guild start events. I wonder if they would ever use that system again, because I really like that. I really like that you can do Tequaddle anytime you like. You can do Triple Trouble anytime you like. You can do Car Queen anytime you like. That is good. But whether we'll see that again that's another thing entirely.
I feel like they will continue that trend. I mean, why not? Like, may as well. The real question for me is, will they add any increased relevancy to guilds and stuff? That's something that we've talked about before. And they haven't announced anything, but I just wonder. I know that like Luxons and Kurziks are dead or whatever, and there's like one faction now or whatever, but I just can't. I hold on to the seed of hope, Teapot. This just like little seed of hope. That's like, there will be some kind of like faction as a guild, or like, I don't know. I've always thought that was one of my favorite parts of Guild Wars 1 was, you had the Luxons versus Kurziks, and there was this ultimate tug of war for territory, and that was based on the faction and like alliance battles. I just always thought that was like such a cool thing to implement into a game. Now, would that work in Guild Wars 2? Probably not. I have all these like super lofty visions of what could be done, but I know in reality we'll probably get nothing like this. I also thought it'd be interesting if there was some map, like imagine, forget everything we know about what's going to happen for EoD. I thought a long time ago it would be cool if they had like a map that legitimately did have a push and pull between players. So it was basically like a PvP map, right? And you had like Luxons, Kurziks, and you were like constantly, pushing back and forth. I thought that would be sick, even if it was just a map for World versus World, because that's essentially what World versus World is. But make it, I don't know, have like bosses in it and stuff too. I don't know. I just like throw it out random crap. Like it'd be kind of neat. I miss alliance battles and Jade Quarry and all that stuff.
They are not going to do that ever.
Oh, they'll absolutely not do that. I know. I just think I'm just being nostalgic about Guild Wars 1 now. I loved Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars Factions is actually my favorite game in the entire Guild Wars franchise.
Wow.
Guild Wars Factions, 100%. I thought that it was fun. I liked Ritualist and Assassin. I thought those were super cool. Oh man, the Jade Sea was so beautiful, and I just loved how guilds interacted. People did faction farming. There was pride in being the top guild and the top alliance, and like people cared about that stuff, right? It mattered to them. They wanted to be number one. You had benefits for being in the top alliances or in a top alliance.
Well, are they doing that with World versus World? Aren't you just describing alliances?
Well, but there's no prestige in World versus World.
Well, there will be when alliances come out.
Why?
Because being the best guild means you're in the best guild or in the best alliance.
What do you get for it?
Well, I don't actually think the
How do people know that you're the best guild?
There probably will be something like that. There'll be a leaderboard. There'll probably be some kind of reward structure. I'd be amazed if there wasn't. But don't you think that in a way the prestige of being that is more important than the actual reward itself? I think to top players it definitely
clout,
is.
man. Everybody wants the clout. Everybody wants
Yeah, I know. I think the
else
clout is
to
more
know
important.
that they're number one.
Like for example, like there was a GVG tournament, right? That was that happened a while ago. Like Roy ran it. It was like MM was doing it. The guild that won, they didn't actually get anything special because the title that doesn't exist, and I don't know what it is. Definitely not. They didn't get that. So they didn't actually get anything unique, but there was still a huge amount of clout for winning it, right? That was a lot of prestige. If you know, oh yeah, we won the GVG tournament. That's still big. It's a big deal.
Man, I don't even know about the GVG tournament though. Like, okay, this makes me seem super out of the loop. I don't even know what you're talking about.
It was, to be fair, it was a while ago. It was like 6 months ago or something.
Okay. I maybe vaguely remember that, but the problem is that those structures don't exist in the game. What I'm suggesting is people want the clout. Teapot, it's about everyone in the game knowing. Like, we kind of have this in PvP with the monthly, and like you have like the statues of your player, and you have like the gizmo and like all this stuff. Everybody freaking knows that you won, right? Like, everybody knows that you won because you have the title and the gizmo and the statue. Everybody knows. If they had something like that for World versus World, I think it would matter more. But what I'm sort of alluding to is that it doesn't really matter if there's not a leaderboard and there's not like something associated, like a marker on your character of some kind that says like, yeah, we are the best alliance in the game. You'd have to have something. Otherwise, it's just people hear about it or whatever.
I mean, I think they would definitely do that though, right? Like, there's no way they would add a system without that. Or at least some kind of prestige system.
It kind of exists right now, doesn't it? Like they tiered all the worlds against each other, but even the top 3 worlds, nobody really cares because nobody knows that you're in the top 3 worlds or whatever for World versus World. I think with alliances they have it would be easier to do that because you can't just like switch worlds and whatever. But yeah, I hope so. I think there's like, look, I'll tell you right now, if they made that, I'd play way more World versus World. I'd get into it. I think it'd be super fun. It'd be competitive, right?
Going crazy.
You'd care. Yeah, you'd care about it, right? It would matter to you. But currently, I just don't think it really like. What does being the does being the number 1 alliance mean right now?
I mean, we had a chat about this on stream a while ago, right? Guild Wars 2 is like Tech Debt, the video game. Right, that's what this game is. Yeah, everything is scuffed. Like, this game is scuffed, Sneb. Have you not noticed? Yeah. Like,
so here's an idea. Actually, what if the top alliance got like a special mount skin for their War Claw only?
I think that would be great. I think that'd be sick. Temporary mount skin, temporary cape, right? Like, etc.
You had a solid gold War Claw. I don't know. But yeah. I actually think that would, like, just having that, even if it was temporary, permanent, I don't really know. Like, basically, you could do the same. Like, it's basically like a gizmo, but not, right? Like, if you win in a certain month, there's a special mount skin that you get.
Look,
that'd be sick.
Look at this. Look, Grouch is linking. See, look, I'm right. Told you I'm right here. Here we go. New rewards and improving all the systems. And we want players to care about winning, and we want to. We're going to introduce systems that allow guilds to flex and compare their World vs. World prowess. See, there you go, Sneb. I was right. I told you were describing a lot. Here it is. This is ages ago, Sneb. Well, you're out of the loop, dude.
I want to see it. Yeah, I'm out of the loop.
September 10th, dude. You're out of the loop. Seriously, man. You are out. Like, woo. See, look, woo. That's you flying out of the loop.
No, but I actually think this is a good point. Like, I am out of the loop, but it's because I haven't paid attention to something like World versus World for so long, right? Because there is no way to distinguish people's current skill level or their like tier. So I actually like that will be enough for me to want to play World versus World more. Currently, my only interaction with World versus World is I just roam around and slay people on a soul beast, and it's scummy, but it's somehow really enjoyable when you're just like sort of half paying attention and chatting with people on Discord. It's like super fun. But there's no reason to like really like want to win in a sense. So the moment that gets added, I'm in, right? Like, I'll play it. I think that's a blast.
Yeah, boom. There you go. It's all locked down. It's confirmed, as you can see there.
We just don't have any details on it right now.
Yeah,
Right?
it's gonna be
That's
a
why I
while.
didn't remember it,
Well,
because there's just no details.
This really parallels with what I was talking about with strikes earlier. You know, we are in the tech debt arc of ArenaNet. Like, yeah, there are a huge amount of issues with it. Do you remember the talk I had when I said that they should fix the game? You know, like instead of like worrying too much about new stuff, this is where I completely double down on that hardcore. Like, they need to fix this, right? We need to like boom, you know, all these issues of the game, hit them with a hammer, right? And then start worrying about like the new stuff. I guess alliances technically are new stuff, which is like a double bonus meme there, but it's the same thing with raids. It's the same thing with PvP. Like, there are lots of issues with these game modes right now. Fixing those issues is super, super important. And yeah, that's going to take a while, and it's going to be a slow process. It's going to be difficult, but it has to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, if you recall, I didn't necessarily disagree with you on that. The problem is that they just have to balance it with creating new content as well. And if they only fix systems, I think they'd be in a bit of trouble, right? So look, I think adding more depth to World versus World through like this kind of ranking system or whatever is going to be massive for the game, because it's something we've needed for a long time. I think it'll reinvigorate that game mode. And I think fixing like the reward systems for something like raids, or fixing the reward system like they said they're going to do for strikes, will reinvigorate it. Like, it'll be a big deal. The question is, how do you balance doing those things while also creating, you know, stuff like new content for people? It's like a tricky balance. Yeah, I don't know. I don't envy their position. I feel like it's very difficult to strike that balance. It takes a lot of skill. I have the confidence that they can do it this time around, because I see good signs, right? There are many good signs, right? These blog posts are nice. They have communicated more. Let's just cross our fingers and hope the next 6 months go really well.
I agree. I mean, that's the moral of the story from this TeaTime. But, you know, I've just got to say this, Sneb, you know, like this, you know, the reason why we're doing this is I have to frame you as the doomer, so I come off well. Okay, that's what I've been doing. Right. I'm setting you up.
It's kind of funny. It's funny because sometimes I watch TeaTime back and I'm like, I think I sound more of a doomer than I actually am, right? Like, I think I like try to purposefully like dig super deep into these things and challenge opinions and whatever, and it makes me come off super doomer. But I mean, ultimately, look, I think that this is maybe part of the problem, but essentially they have me in their clutches, right? I'm gonna play the game. I've been a fan of the game forever, right? Like, I love the game, and even if they don't release a ton of new endgame content, I'm still gonna come back and play through Kantha and do. I just like the game, right? I like the environment. I like the community. And so I might come off as super doomer, it's just because I care, right? Like, I just care about it. I like talking about it. I like theorizing what could be better about it, or what I would do differently. I just find that enjoyable. That doesn't mean I think the game's going to die or anything. I guess my one big doomer take is I actually am super, super concerned about information loss via like really experienced players quitting, but whatever.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it certainly is. It is difficult. Yeah, I'm in the clutches as well. I'm in the nest. I'm just like there. Like, ArenaNet is about to devour me, or feed me to like a chick. I'm like a worm about to be, you know, devoured by ArenaNet's like baby birds. But honestly, I love it. You know, I'm enjoying it. Okay, there actually is one thing I wanted to talk about that I found super interesting, actually, and we don't have much early info on this, but there was some speculation about it because it was shown on the new Kaineng stream. And it was this, what was I can't remember the exact wording. It was like seasonal reward track. Did you see this? The seasonal reward track thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I did see it.
This was super interesting to me. This is super interesting.
People perceive it as the seasonal reward track. But what does that really mean? Does that mean like every quarter there's going to be this big reward track that accrues with all of the... Is this like the new way to get rewards in the PvE maps and EoD? Or what does this mean?
I interpret it as... Do you recall monthly achievements in Guild Wars 2?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yep.
That's how I interpreted it, except instead of every 1 month, seasonal would imply 3 months, right?
Okay. So what kind of rewards do you get from this?
Well, who knows?
Is this
I mean,
just to keep,
cowbells
is this to
apparently.
keep,
Look, you can
what's
see
the
here.
goal of this too? Is the goal to keep people engaged?
Yes, I think the way I would look at this, a lot of people think it's some kind of paid battle pass. I really don't think so. I think adding another layer of monetization doesn't even make sense. I think if you add too many layers of monetization, you almost end up like confusing people and they don't know what to buy, right? At that point, they're like, what the hell even is this, right? So I don't think it's that. I think it's going to be an in-game system. Well, I mean, to be clear, this is not in the game. It hasn't been mentioned whatsoever by ArenaNet. So this might never even make it to the game, right? It's just like a thing that got shown. But I think it will be like something that tries to address the problem of players not understanding what to do. So it's not a map reward track. I think it's a game reward track, right? So that it will like demonstrate a bunch of activities that you can do in the game, right? And it will say
more like an achievement.
Yeah, well, it is an achievement though. It was in the achievement panel.
The monthlies were, yeah.
Yeah, but so was this. Like, so was this thingy, right? Like, I've got the image here.
Bring it up
right?
again. Yeah, bring it up.
Yeah, I'll show it on stream. It's here on stream, right?
Yeah.
There's actually a really interesting thing here, by the way, about
yes,
Topeka. Actually, is that there was actually, dude, people are. I don't know how people are so good at this. In the extra live stream, they had like they showed like the cinematic editor they had, and Topeka was one of the little folders they had actually, and people are now theorizing that meant End of Dragons, right? It kind of makes sense, right? You know, we're going to Kansas, we're going to Cantha, right? I know that's a bit of a stretch, but quite amusing, I think, actually, with the way that works. But yeah, so it might be something to do later on with End of Dragons or something like that. But yeah, people are really good at picking up all these like tiny little details. Yeah, like here's the let's see logos. He's on it. Look at that. Here's the image from this. You can see here, right? They actually have, you know, Living World 03, 04, 05, raids, Topeka, Vistas, right? They have all these different like categories for their cinematics they have in their little cinematic developer browser thingamy here. So that's why people think that, which is super interesting, I think. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff. But yeah, I think it's because wouldn't we all agree that a big issue with the game is that players go, "What do I do? What am I supposed to do? What do I play? What does this game have to offer? Does it have raids? Does it have this? Does it have that?" So having this big system that basically says, "Hey, buddy, do this," seems like a really good idea, no?
So essentially, what my understanding of this so far is, what we're speculating is that this becomes, instead of monthly, seasonal achievements. These seasonal achievements have perhaps unique rewards or not unique rewards, or what are we thinking about that? Is it just going to be whatever reward, and the achievements just say go complete metas in this map, go do this in X map, and so it's just supposed to guide and sort of direct players on what to do for 3 months at a time? I think part of the problem with monthlies though wasn't that people just tried to grind them out in like 2 days. So how does this shift? And if it's a reward track, is it repeatable? Is it infinite? Or is it like you complete it and then you have that reward and it's over? Or is it you complete it and then you can get lesser reward, like some of the reward tracks?
I imagine they would tune it such that if you played like a good amount, like, you know, a decent amount of hours per week, you would complete most of it by the end of the season. So yeah, sure, some people are going to burn it and like nuke it really quickly, but in a way that's okay because the type of player who's going to nuke it really quickly probably knows what they're doing. Whereas a player who's going to take it a little bit slower, then they'll be guided a little bit more, right? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense to me. I think this is a really interesting idea, right? It will guide people on where to go. And this is something we've talked about a lot. Like, what do players do? What's helping them understand where they're supposed to be, or how there's... Sometimes people just need to know how to have fun, right? Like, you need to direct them and be like, hey, if you like this, then go try this. And this maybe gives them a way to interact with that. And that might be fun, especially for the new maps. And it will force players into specific metas. And what if they were to do this with some legacy content?
Ooh,
right at the beginning, I don't think that's a good idea. You want people like hammered in, focused on the new content, but like over time you can start extending this to other things, right? And you know, that was sort of successful with the return to achievements. Perhaps this is the next iteration of that.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. You can draw players back to old content to keep it up to date. Potentially even give some away, give some of it away for free, right? Like giving old episodes away for free potentially at some point, right? You could have segments on it that would focus on specific events, specific maps that would draw players to that. You could have things that would draw players to trying out stuff like strike missions, fractals, PvP, world versus world, right? You could integrate like stuff like bonus weekends into it, right? That would, you know, nudge people at that type of content, right? I'm sure there's loads of things that a system like this could be very, very useful for. Because again, I think that this is one of the really big core issues in the game. And someone in chat just said that people on Bellula's video, like Big Man from World of Warcraft and other MMOs,
Bellula.
Like people in that comment section and in that community were saying, yeah, Guild Wars 2 has no endgame, right? It doesn't have challenging endgame content, right? And that
hyperbolic, but yeah.
It's well, I mean, okay, no, but they don't mean it in the same way that we mean it. When we say, yeah, raids are easy, we're like, yeah, man, raids, yeah, we're so good at the game, bro. Yeah, I'm a big pumper. Yeah, I farm raids, bro. That's not what they mean. They mean that it literally doesn't exist, right? Like that's the information they're expressing there.
And that comes from, you know, they played once in 2012.
Yeah, and they actually didn't exist. Yeah,
totally true, right? And so but they're not informed. They don't have the information, right?
But
there's actually lots to do.
Right now, the game doesn't really inform you. Does the game ever actually tell you about raids?
It's a good question.
I think you got a mail on the release of the raid, but I'm not sure if you're a new player, you would ever encounter it.
Yeah. Okay, this is gonna make me sound so bad, but like they always send those mails, and there's so many paragraphs. I just can't read them. I don't know. I kind of like skim it quickly, and then I just like delete it. So I'm sure other people probably do that.
Because I know you get a mail about fractals, right? When you get to level 80, you do get that, and you get mails about dungeons as you level up. You know, when you get to certain level thresholds, you'll be messaged about that. But I don't know. I maybe you do. Maybe you do get like a mail about raids. But let's be honest. Look, like you said, me delete, me no read, me delete, gone, right? Yeah. Whereas, get mystic coins or whatever, like laurels or whatever you're obtaining. Okay, now you're gonna get people attracted to that type of content, right?
Do they not like after you beat the Heart of Thorns story or anything, go like greater danger awaits in Spirit Vale? Like they don't do anything like that. I'm not saying that to be like, oh, they don't do that. I just don't know, right? I wonder if that would be valuable or not. Maybe not, right? Because I think I don't know. I could see it going both ways. Like imagine you're just like a casual like level 50 player. You're perusing Lornar's Pass. It's like a big map. You're just having a good time. You're like, oh, what is this portal? You just step into Hall of Chains cash. Right?
level 25. Like you just
It takes them a while to figure out how to make like a 10-person squad, but they're like, oh yeah, I definitely want to go in here and see what this is all about. They get in there, they're like, oh yeah, it's like maybe like some like vet boss. They like jump down, they're just like instantly destroyed by the ticking damage. Yeah. I don't even know. Can you go in there like that? That seems like
you can enter raids at any level. Like you're not level gated out.
So you can just like, oh my gosh, like that's I wonder if that's ever happened to somebody. You know, they just like casually exploring like a new player, just like go into Hall of Chains.
They would have to know to tag up though, because otherwise it won't let them in. They have to be in a squad. Although I guess it gives you a prompt, right?
You don't have to. Yeah, exactly. It gives you the prompt. They like figure it out, right?
They squad up. They go in there. Just get in there.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone's ever done that. That'd be hilarious. Oh, that would be rough. Oh, yeah, man. Chat. Type 1 if you've ever done that. There you go. If you've ever just casually walked into Hall of Chains.
Isa would have done that. You know, he would have done that shit.
Oh yeah.
Because he got lost. It's a true story. Isa, one of the most powerful raiders in the entire game right now. uninstalled the game after he got lost in Lornar's Pass and had no money to waypoint and couldn't get out. All the ones are one-shotting him. Imagine if he'd walked into Hall of Chains, level 20. Would have been tough. See, look, it's a true story. He confirms that, right? It's big. But yeah.
No, this might kind of stray a little off topic, but just bear with me here. I've been playing Xandri's like Iron Man mode challenge thing a little bit. And it's given me a huge newfound respect for the game. Like it's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Because when everything's a little bit more difficult, it feels like a little more real. I don't know how to explain it. Like when you're in danger and there's something on the line, there's like something thrilling about playing the game, right? And having to like really strategize about how you're going to move around the map, how many enemies you're going to fight at one time, because you could die, right? And dying is bad suddenly. It's actually remarkable how that changes the game experience. I don't really have much more to say on that. I often wonder if they were to add some kind of like and they'll never do this, but like if they were to add like a hardcore mode, like an official mode like that, I actually think that'd be so cool. Because wow, like I don't have a lot of time because I'm moving and stuff, right? So I just wanted to try it out and see what it's like. So I made it to like level 20 so far.
Yeah.
And the entire experience has been really fun.
Intense.
Really,
you're
really
doing it
fun.
on a totally fresh account, right? Totally fresh account?
Totally fresh. Totally
yeah,
fresh
so you don't
account.
have mounts. Yeah, because if you have mounts, then it gets a bit cheesy, right?
Yeah,
all the
no mounts, stuff. Right? So you have to, like, I tried to make it to the fire elemental really fast because I thought, oh, I could get a bunch of experience for doing that event. But as I was walking, things got higher level than me, and suddenly they were like taking off half my HP, and I had to think about, all right, well, maybe I should go level a bit before continuing into Metrica province here.
Do you think you're going to crumble at some point? Will you die? When I say crumble, will you try and fight 2 Moas and die to them?
Oh, see, okay. I'm exposed. I picked Core Necro because I knew that you could never die on that.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So there's like a couple moments on my stream where I'm literally fighting like 15 things at once, and I'm kiting them in a circle so they never hit me, and then I just keep going into Shroud and hitting 4, and just like slowly killing all of them, but getting tons of experience. But even so, there have been a few times where I've almost died to a vet, or I almost died to falling damage, or like things like that I just think make it really fun, and I kind of miss that experience about playing Guild Wars 2 for the first time. And I wonder if I'll have, tying this back in, I wonder if I'll have like a moment like that in EoD, right? Where I'm like, oh man, like I am going to experience it for the first time. So like, will I have that same kind of like, oh, this is fresh and exciting. I hope that it just like blows me away when I play it through the first time. Now, I think the one thing that makes it different is that when I've played things like Drizzlewood Coast for the first time, there's no danger, so it just feels like I'm just breezing through it. Yeah, I wonder if there'll be any meta or something that fails. Look, I'm gonna say this right now for the record. If any meta event fails, I will be happy because I think that it'll make it way more interesting.
Well, you're on the right server for that. I mean, I've seen Pinata.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I guess like the idea of me being able to fail the Iron Man mode challenge just has me curious about if anything in EoD will ever present this moment where I'll be close to failing, right? So
that's I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is what this thing really took off in classic World of Warcraft. I don't know if you're aware of the classic WoW hardcore challenge.
I heard about it.
Yeah, so in that game it's very extreme. So to get to level 60, it might take you over 100 hours, right? Like honestly, most people it'll be like 150 hours plus to get 60. And
it's totally unofficial, right? Like people
there's no, it's not. It's official. They actually added it in something called Classic WoW Season of Mastery recently. There's a buff you can get called Soul of Iron, which if you die at any point, it permanently marks your character with the level where you died. Right? There's actually an official hardcore mode, and it is so good. Like people crumble in the most hilarious ways. Like the thing is, in a way, it's a bit better in that game because what you're doing, kind of like kiting the mobs, like only what mage can do that, but basically no one else can. The mobs just outrun you and kill you. In classic WoW, it's really funny. I like seriously. I saw like one guy. There's a video of people upload their death clips for comedy value. You know, someone tries to fight like a level 22 crab. They're level 17. It just kills them. Right? They're dead. They're just dead to level 17 crab. Right? Or dead to level 22 crab. So there's a lot of danger in that game. You know, anything can kill you at any time. You can just randomly die. It's really funny. And there was a huge community, like a massive part of the classic WoW community was based around this hardcore mode. You know, it was all about, you know, they had like a guild set up and they had an add-on you can install that whenever anyone died, everyone in the guild would see this message. Oh, this person died, right? What they died to and what their last words were as well. It's really funny. Yeah, so I think something like that can be really, really good.
Yeah, man, I love hardcore challenges. I have a hardcore. I mean, I haven't played in years really, but I have a hardcore Iron Man in old school RuneScape, and I'm actually looking at the high scores. I'll expose myself. I'm not that good or anything, but like, I'll post it. That's does that actually take you? It's hardcore Sneb, or well, HC space Sneb is my name. You can look me up.
You're not found.
Look me up.
Not found, Sneb.
Space Sneb.
I'm doing it. I'm trying. I've done it. Okay, boom. I've located you. Oh, let's see. What have we got here? Level 94 fishing, 99 fire making.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm like, it's not like
it's good shit,
best person in the world, but it's just so fun, right? It's so fun because you have to stay engaged. What this doesn't tell you is that I died on like 3 other hardcore Iron Man, and one was to a tree in Draenor Village. Which...
dead to a tree. Nice.
I made a mistake. Okay, for those that know, there's a place called Draenor Manor. You go and you do the Vampire Slayer quest. And something was going on and I had to AFK, and I made the mistake of leaving my game on. And I was at the exact box where there's a moving tree that strikes you for 1 damage. I came back and I was dead. And it was the worst feeling ever, right? I was like, oh no. I was a lot more careful with when I AFK'd, but like things like this make the game so much more engaging, right? You now have to think,
because it means that
you have to completely rethink what you're doing in the game.
It adds risk. It changes the game completely. Because, you know, it's funny because I've been doing hardcore WoW as well, and I was actually having nightmares that I died in the game. Like that's not a joke, right? You know, I would go to bed and I would have a nightmare that I died to like level 47 snake. Right. And it's just like, like what else can do that? Right. Like how, if you don't have, there has to be some kind of punish, right? I think it's why people like high risk, right? Like Albion Online or EVE Online, or, you know, like loot PvP, right? People like that stuff because risk makes it engaging because it forces you to be like ultra engaged with this stuff. Like you have no choice because there's actual consequences, you know?
Yeah, and you just can't get that in any other way other than a hardcore mode. I don't know how difficult those sorts of things are implement, but man, just just participating a little bit. Like I'm not gonna be able to make it to level 80 with the move and everything, right? But I've just had so much fun just like thinking about what like my strategy of getting around the maps, how I'm gonna level quickly, how I'm gonna avoid dying, what class to play, what build to run, what weapons to use. What's going to be the safest, what's going to have the best risk versus reward ratio. That's all very, very fun theory crafting to me, because even though like I like theory crafting builds and stuff to try to be better at raids, but I just am never going to be that, right? Like I'm never going to be like a hardcore, the #1 raider or whatever. I'm never going to be one of the super big speed clearing guilds. But the idea that I can just not die or think about little things to improve my not dying capacity, that is really cool. I don't know. I hope that I hope that, imagine if we had that in Guild Wars 2. That'd be so cool. But for now, EoD, I wonder if there'll be any sort of level of risk with any of the metas. I would love to see metas that are more like a chalk, or, you know, like any of the Heart of Thorns metas that are even maybe make them a little bit more, make like, if they made at least a couple of the metas like Marionette, I'd be super happy, because we will fail when we first try them, because we won't know what to do. It'll be chaos, right? And I love that. I love the idea of failing and then everyone in the map having to go like, what did we just experience, right? And like talk about it. I think that is such an interesting thing that could happen with End of Dragons. I hope it's like that.
That's copium, buddy.
You think it's total copium? You don't think they're gonna put something like Marionette? At least one meta. I feel like they'll have one meta that's a little bit more challenging, and then the rest will probably be
maybe
easy breezy.
Maybe. I think the thing is that if you want to make a meta challenging, it has to be something like Dragon Stand. There has to be a level of complexity to it, I think, or have like really high health. Like if you look at the metas that fail, it's stuff like Drakkar fails, right? Like Marionette fails. I don't think they would put personal responsibility in an open world map. I think that's maybe a bridge too far. Could they add something with pretty high health that has some punishing mechanics, or like a bit of a time limit on it? I could see that maybe for like the final map has a more challenging event on it, but
yeah,
I think like they'll go like fairly chill, you know?
I mean, look, Dragon Stand fails on NA and off hours.
I mean, but yeah, not on Prime though, right? Like it'll be fun on Prime.
Yeah, very seldom. Yeah. No, probably.
And I've seen Pinata fail. It does happen sometimes.
Is there a clip of that? I like don't believe it. Come on.
Wait, really? Fail? You actually don't believe it?
Oh, you mean the pre-event or the actual pinata?
No, look at this clip. Look at this clip, Sneb.
Failing pinata on NA. I don't believe it.
Take a look. Watch this clip. Are you watching it?
I am. You don't have enough people.
Well, look,
you have like 6 people.
No, that's a lot of people, Sneb. That's a lot of people there.
Did that just teleport?
So yeah, okay. I'll do a little bit of a secret. The reason why this failed was it was actually because it bugged and it was desynced. So everyone thought they were hitting it, but they actually weren't. And then it resynced afterwards and teleported forwards. So no one could hit it until quite late in the event.
Got on NA.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, I think
what if that was the pinata with the confetti.
Yeah, yeah, it probably was. Yeah, that's actually true. It probably is the case. I kind of want to wrap things up here a little bit. Do you have any kind of like final closing thoughts to share on like the seasonal thingamy, right? To discuss that
the seasonal thing. I actually think that's like I think that's big, right? I think there's a lot of places that can go with that. It's kind of like bringing the monthly back, but not the monthly, and then tying some rewards to it. They could make unique rewards. They can go back to older content and essentially do like the return to thing.
Yep.
I also believe there's a lot of potential to just basically move players where you want them to be moved, right? Because if you create achievements in certain locations, you can not force, but you can highly encourage players to go to get achievement points and whatever. And I think that's a big deal because being able to control where the population moves is kind of an important thing when it comes to these achievements. Because if you want players to go to and actually engage with certain content, providing some incentive is a good way to get them to do that. So I think overall that reward track system could have a lot of potential. We don't know hardly anything about it though right now.
Yeah, it's a really good way to lean into Guild Wars 2's strengths of everything staying relevant, right? But obviously, people always want to play the new stuff, but adding an achievement or some kind of reward for going back to old stuff, like I think that's a good way to play to the strength of the game, being horizontal and having this lack of verticality so that old content will always be relevant, right? Like, Queensdale is still relevant to this day, right? That's pretty good. And I think, bringing up the return is a really good example because the return to achievements demonstrated that if you give players like a bit of a nudge, it keeps people engaged unbelievably effectively. Like the return, honestly, I was not expecting it to be as successful as it was. The return to achievements hard carried the game. It was like Heel Scourge. It was Heel Scourge for Guild Wars 2. Like, ArenaNet got carried hard by that. Whoever came up with that definitely deserves a bit of a big brain promotion, I guess, because it really did get people logged in and it kept them playing, even through a massive amount of downtime through all of the game, right? So I think stuff like this, like basically having that up permanently to an extent, right, with rewards and achievements for going back to old content, playing new content, trying out different areas of the game, sounds like an unbelievably good idea. I really hope we hear about something like that because let's bring it. Let's tie this up neatly. We were talking about roadmaps earlier. I would love to hear about this type of system if it is going to actually see the light of day, if it's going to be implemented anytime soon in something like a roadmap, because again, it really leans into this fixing some of the issues that new players have, fixing the issues that the game has overall with transparency and clarity of what you can do in the game, what the game actually has to offer, offering you that menu of stuff to do. So yeah, I really want to hear more about it. Hopefully it wasn't just like a random meme and we're all blowing it up way out of proportion and it was just like a random test UI thing. But there you go. That's my take on that.
Lots of potential. Lots of potential.
I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up at that point. I think it's time. I think it's time to get out of here. I was like, you know, today, Sneb, it's chill tea time. You know, talk about the stream.
We got the robes on.
Yeah. Got the robes on. I've got my headband. It's slowly been creeping up my head over time, exposing my massive forehead.
I've been getting increasingly sweatier over time.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I don't know
nice.
how you do this.
That's nice.
I don't know how you do this. I'm like dying in this robe.
Yeah. Well, it's like, look,
he does this for you. He wears the robe for you.
Your headband is putrid, and now you're putrid as well, right? Like your full body is as putrid as your headband, which I think is good. But anyway, Sneb, I'll give you the final word, and of course, you can explain what you do in Guild Wars 2.
Hey, I have a guild called the Skane Gang where we help create statics on NA. We currently have 12. One is a CM progression static, and the other 11 are like... The other 11 are, they meet for 2 hours, so low time commitment once a week, and they game hard. And we have a spreadsheet where people can see... we have a spreadsheet where people can see what roles each other can play, and they keep track, and we have guild records that we keep track of. It's a lot of fun. That's what I do. Spend most of my time doing in game is rating content. You can find that over on my stream at twitch.tv/snebzor. I'm also on Twitter and I say things on there occasionally. But I'm moving in a week, so I'm gonna be in a different room. You can see all of my merch is all packed up. I'm ready to go. But thankfully, the move will be in time. So fun fact. Fun fact as well, I was originally our closing date, or the day we were going to take possession on the house, was February 28th. We moved it up 2 weeks. Feels good, man.
That feels good, man. Big pace there. I love that pace. Look, look, you can even raid with Grouch, guys. Very chill community, right? Watch out for Demos, though. Watch out for Oil. Oil gameplay is definitely a threat. But yeah, there you go. Sneb is moving soon, guys. It's going to be a brand new Sneb zone. Be sure to check that out. Links there, guys. Look at those links. Twitch.tv/snebzor, twitter.com/snebzor. Get in there. Your actions have consequences. The Goose is loose. Force him to enable GooseJAM as well. No, Goose Rave, rather. He hasn't got that enabled yet. Make him do it. But anyway, that is going to be it for Tea Time. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for future Tea Times. I really will try and get that Duma Tea Time as well. I just want to get it out of everyone's systems and just go hard, right? And honestly, I think it's interesting to listen to perspectives that don't agree with you. And I will challenge people on their hatred for Guild Wars 2, right? It'll be great. I'm going to send that one directly to Grouch. He's going to love it, right? You know, I'm going to say, look, Grouch, look at this. Great Tea Time. Look at these people who are just bashing the game for 3 hours straight. It's going to be amazing. But stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for all of the future stuff that we're going to be doing. I will continue streaming now because why the hell not? Follow the stream. Subscribe to the stream. Follow me on Twitter. There are all my social media stuff. Get over there, guys. Links below the stream as well, guys. Of course, for Sneb and myself. Okay, another exclamation mark hosts there. Boom, or other host in this case. Sneb in the chat. There it is. Go check that out there as well. But that is going to be it for Tea Time. I'm trying to... I forgot to change my starting soon thing to say, I'll be right back. And I'm not going to change it because I can't be bothered. But the good news is, okay, this is the good news. I will remember to fix it for next week, okay? I'm just going to leave it black. I've disabled it. You guys won't even see it. It'll just be the intro screen, nothing else. It's going to be perfect. But anyway, there it goes. That is it, right? Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. I think it was a really good one. Very exciting stuff there. And of course, we're both looking forward to End of Dragons a whole lot, and we hope you are as well. Enjoy the hype. Enjoy the Tea Time. Leave us some comments, guys. Tell us what you think of everything that we said here, and tell us why we're wrong as well, because I just love reading comments like that. So make sure you get on that right now. That is it. I'll be back in a moment after a very quick intermission. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.